One day, I got a call saying my husband had been in an accident. The shocking part wasn't just the accident, it was that he had been with his mistress, and she hadn't survived. My husband, on the other hand, was now paralyzed from the waist down. After the accident, he began demanding that I take care of him for the rest of his life. I couldn't believe it. Was I really supposed to spend my life looking after a man who had been unfaithful to me? My name is Mandy, I'm 32 years old, and I live with my husband Ray and our almost 5-year-old daughter, Lily. I'd taken a break from work when I was pregnant with Lily, but I returned to my job once she started daycare. Between work and raising a child, I stay busy, but my life feels full, mostly thanks to Ray. Ray has always been a hardworking husband and father. He takes good care of Lily and supports us well. Our daily routine was simple but special. We'd have dinner together, and Ray would listen to Lily tell stories from her day once he got home from work. "Daddy, look, I drew a picture at daycare today," Lily would say. "Oh, did you? You're so good at drawing. Lily, maybe you can draw a picture of me next time." "Okay," and Mary told me her family went to the amusement park. "Can we go too?" "Sure, how about we all go next weekend?" "Really? Yay, I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, Lily, though I love your mom first," Ray would say with a wink. Lily would pretend to pout, and we'd all laugh. These everyday moments with my family were my greatest joy. But then Ray began to change. He started coming home late and leaving early on his days off. At first, I thought he was just busy with work, but it happened so often that I got worried. So, I decided to ask him about it. "Ray, you've been coming home late a lot. Is everything okay at work?" I asked. "Oh, yeah," he replied. "I've just been busy with some new projects." "I see," I said, "but you've also been leaving early on your days off, and you never tell me where you're going." Well, I've been visiting my parents," he said. "I thought I should check on them from time to time." Ray's parents aren't very young, but we usually see them every few months, and they're doing fine, so this didn't quite add up. So why all these sudden visits to his parents? I was suspicious, but didn't want to push him too hard, so I let it go. 2 weeks later, Ray texted me again, saying he'd be late because he had overtime. This time, he didn't get home until after midnight. When he arrived, he seemed cheerful, but I immediately noticed something odd. "Ray, where have you been?" I asked. "I told you, I had to work late," he replied. "But what about that smell? It's a woman's perfume. Why would you smell like that if you were at work?" I said. Ray's eyes darted around nervously. He seemed flustered and then quickly responded, Actually, we had a client event today." "A client event?" I asked, doubtful. He nodded quickly, adding, "One of the VIP clients is a woman. We were drinking together, and her perfume must have rubbed off on me." "Then why did you lie about working overtime?" I questioned. "You could have just told me about the event." Ray clasped his hands and said, "I felt guilty. You're working hard at home with Lily and everything. I didn't want you to worry." I couldn't press him further, so I let it go and went to bed. But after that, every time he came home late, I could smell the same perfume on him. Each time I asked, he'd say it was just another client event. This only made me more suspicious. One day, feeling like something was really wrong, I left Lily with my parents and met up with my younger sister to talk about it. As soon as we sat down at a cafe, I told her everything. "Ray has been coming home late a lot lately, and he always smells like a woman's perfume," I said. My sister looked serious and replied, "Yeah, he's definitely cheating." Hearing it from someone else made me believe it even more, so Ray was really cheating on me. Plus, she added, it's weird to have client events with the same person so often, and he'd have to be pretty close for her perfume to stick to him. "I know it's hard with Lily and everything," my sister said, "but I think you really need to have a serious talk with Ray." Just then, her tone changed. "Hey, look over there," she said, sounding disturbed. "What's going on?" I asked. "Speak of the devil, isn't that your husband?" she said, pointing. I followed her gaze and saw Ray. Beside him was a young woman, younger than me, holding his arm tightly. The sight was so painful I was speechless. Ignoring my shock, my sister began taking photos of them with her phone. "What are you doing?" I asked, still stunned. "Don't just stand there," she replied. "We need to gather evidence. Start recording a video." Shaking, I opened the camera on my phone. Ray and the woman got into his car, still holding on to each other and kissing multiple times. I recorded everything. When they finally drove off, I stopped filming. Here I was, Ray's wife, now holding proof of his betrayal. I suddenly realized we were still in the cafe, and tears began streaming down my face. My sister stayed quiet for a moment before squeezing my hand and speaking firmly. I know this is incredibly painful, she said, but you need to talk to him, for Lily's sake too. Can we just let this man, who lies so easily and cheats, be her father? Her words snapped me back to reality. That's right, I'm the only one who can protect Lily. Ray might be her father, but he's lost the right to be a real dad. I needed to confront him about what he'd done, sooner rather than later. After talking it over with my sister, we decided that Lily would stay at our parents' house for the day. I went home to wait for Ray, but he didn't come back, no matter how long I waited. Then, around 10 p.m., our rarely used landline phone rang. Who could be calling at this hour? When I picked up, a man's voice said, "Is this Mrs. Johnson's residence?" "Yes, it is. Who am I speaking with?" I replied. "This is the police. Is this Mr. Ray Johnson's residence?" "Yes, it is. Did my husband do something wrong?" I asked, nervous. "Please stay calm," the officer said. "Your husband has been in an accident." "What?" I gasped. The police explained that Ray had been in a car accident. A woman in the passenger seat, his mistress, hadn't survived. Ray, meanwhile, had been taken to a nearby hospital. Without thinking, I rushed straight to the hospital. When I arrived, Ray was in surgery. A police officer explained the situation. "From what we've learned, it seems your husband and the woman had been in a close relationship." "Yes, I suspected it. I was actually going to confront him about his affair today," I replied. The officer added hesitantly, "It's difficult to say, but because of the accident, there's a chance your husband may be left with a permanent disability." I felt overwhelmed. In further conversations with the police, I found out that Ray's mistress had also been married. Her husband, who'd also come to the hospital, looked devastated, especially since Ray had survived and she hadn't. A few days later, Ray regained consciousness. I went to the hospital with my parents, my sister, and Lily. I left Lily with my sister while my parents and I entered Ray's room. When we arrived, his parents were already there. Ray had been left paralyzed on one side of his body due to the accident. Ray looked at us and said, "I'm sorry. I know I've caused you all a lot of worry." Before I could say anything, his parents rushed to his side. "What are you apologizing for?" his dad said. "We're just glad you're alive. Surviving is a blessing." "Yes, Ray," his mom added. "You've always been a good man, that's why you survived." "Thank you, Dad, Mom," Ray said quietly. "I'm grateful I made it." My husband and in-laws were acting like his affair didn't exist. As they celebrated his survival, my worry turned into anger, and I finally spoke up. "Sorry to interrupt your celebration, but Ray, will you divorce me?" "What? Divorce? What are you talking about?" he asked, shocked. "Ray, you got into an accident with your mistress," I replied. "Here are the divorce papers. Just sign them." No, you've got it all wrong," he stammered. The woman in the car was just a business associate, not a mistress. He was lying, and it was obvious. I decided to tell him everything I knew. "Are you really going to pretend you didn't cheat, Ray? I saw you with her. I watched you two get into the car together," I said firmly. "And no, it wasn't like that," he tried to argue. "Don't make excuses," I snapped, forgetting we were in a hospital room. "You even spent less time with Lily, just to run around with her. What were you thinking?" At this, my mother-in-law frowned and interrupted, "Mandy, what are you so angry about? If Ray cheated, it's probably because you did something wrong." "What are you saying?" I asked, shocked. "Ray just woke up and is dealing with a lot. The doctors told you he's paralyzed on one side," she continued. "He needs your full care now. Instead of talking about divorce, you should start learning how to be his caregiver." Ray added, "She's right. As my wife, you'll be taking care of me from now on." At that moment, any sympathy I had for him disappeared completely. At first, I'd felt sorry for him despite everything he'd done, but now I couldn't care less. They felt no remorse for what they'd put me through, only for themselves. Holding back my anger, I looked at my mother-in-law and said, "Are you serious? Who on earth would want to take care of a cheating fool like him, idiot? Mandy, how dare you insult my Ray, my mother-in-law exclaimed. Well, it's the truth, isn't it? I replied. He cheated, and he caused an accident. Isn't everything that's happened his fault? But even if he was at fault in the accident, cheating happens because of the other person, she insisted. So you're saying that if I did something wrong, he was allowed to cheat? I was balancing work, taking care of Lily, and handling everything at home for our family. And you still blame me while defending your son? My firm tone made her go quiet. Ray, unable to take it, yelled, "How dare you talk to my mom like that?" He glared at me, as if being injured made him somehow superior. I walked up to him, looking down at him intensely. He muttered, "What the," in a nervous voice. "Who do you think is responsible for all this?" I demanded. "Well, this mess is because you betrayed our family by cheating," I said sharply. "You even got into an accident with your mistress. Do you realize how foolish that is? The only reason this is all messy is because you suddenly want a divorce," he shot back, still refusing to take responsibility. Feeling disgusted, I finally lashed out, "Grow up, Ray. How long are you going to keep blaming everyone else? You're the one who cheated, and on top of that, your mistress died in the accident. Stop justifying yourself, Mandy." He stammered. "You've destroyed our family with your selfish affair. I don't know how much pain you've caused Lily. You've not only hurt me, but you've broken our daughter's heart. There's no way I could stay married to someone like you. Just live with your consequences." As I turned away, Ray looked shocked and speechless, his face pale. Then, the door opened, and Lily walked in. "Lily? How did?" "Sorry, sis," said my sister, following behind. I took my eyes off her for a second. Seeing Lily, Ray immediately tried to get her on his side. "Lily," he said, "you wouldn't want Daddy and Mommy to be apart, right?" Lily looked thoughtful, then said, "If Mommy's here, I'm fine." Ray looked stunned. "What? Why?" "Because Mommy looks sad when she's with Daddy." "And that's because Daddy does things that Mommy hates, right?" she asked. "Well, I don't like it when Daddy makes Mommy sad," Lily said. "I don't need a daddy who does that. I'm fine with just Mommy." Ray was taken aback, completely stunned by Lily's words. With nothing more to say, Ray lay back on the bed, shoulders slumped. When I handed him the divorce papers again, he finally gave up and signed them. After that, I hired a lawyer to pursue alimony and child support, backed by the evidence of his affair. Ray also had to pay damages to the husband of his late mistress, which added to the large sum he owed. Since his mistress had been a junior employee at his company, his infidelity was exposed, and he ended up getting fired. Losing both his job and his reputation, and being responsible for another person's death, was a heavy consequence, but it felt like justice. The combined financial hits drained Ray's savings, and he ended up selling our house and moving into a small apartment with his parents. Now, his in-laws care for their wheelchair-bound son every day. As for me, I decided to stay with my parents for a while, with Lily, to give us time to recover. Once things have settled, I plan to live on my own with Lily again, but for now, being surrounded by family feels better for her well-being. One day, on our way to daycare, I asked her something that had been on my mind. "Hey, Lily, are you really okay?" I asked gently. "Okay with what?" she replied, looking up at me. "With it just being us. Without Daddy around." Lily gave me a bright smile and said, "I love Mommy the most. I don't like anyone who makes Mommy sad." Hearing this, I smiled back. "I see. Mommy loves you too, Lily." Lily wrapped her arms around me with all her little might, and as I hugged her back, I promised myself I would protect her and be there for her always.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth, a 27-year-old woman. I've been married to Douglas for 2 years now. We don't have children yet. Our life took a major turn when Douglas's father, Keith, passed away unexpectedly. His sudden death from a heart attack came as a complete shock to everyone. At the time, Douglas and I were living in another state, far from his family. During the funeral, Douglas's uncle subtly hinted that, as Keith's youngest and only son, Douglas was expected to return home. The family needed him, especially his mother, Ashley, who would need support after losing her husband. A few months later, Douglas told me he had arranged to transfer to an office near his family home. He made this decision without discussing it with me, which upset me deeply. I felt such a big change in our lives should have been a mutual decision. When I expressed my frustration, Douglas apologized and admitted he had expected me to oppose the idea. He explained that he wanted to help his mother and thought moving closer would be best. He also mentioned my strained relationship with Ashley, his mother, and said he didn't want that to influence his decision. My relationship with Ashley has always been tense. When we lived far away, we only visited during extended holidays because of our busy schedules. Ashley often complained about how rarely we visited, comparing us to Douglas's sisters, Stephanie and Catherine, who live nearby and visit often. Douglas always defended us, explaining that our distance and work commitments made frequent visits difficult. Ashley's main issue with me, however, has always been about us not having children yet. During a summer visit, she openly questioned why we hadn't started a family, focusing on whether I could even have children. It was a deeply embarrassing moment for me. Despite all this, I decided to move with Douglas. I figured we wouldn't be staying at his mother's house constantly, so I could manage. Surprisingly, Ashley seemed genuinely happy about my decision. A few weeks after we moved, she even invited me over for tea. This was the first time she had made such an effort, and I reluctantly agreed to go. When I arrived at Ashley's house, both Ashley and Stephanie were there to greet me. Stephanie's tone was sarcastic as she said, "Elizabeth, it's been so long. Why haven't you visited since you moved here?" I already regretted coming. Then Ashley, almost cheerfully, said, "I was so happy when you decided to move closer. But it seems I was wrong. You don't like me, do you?" Her words caught me off guard. It was clear this move wasn't going to be as simple as I had hoped. The tension I felt before had only intensified, and I realized this new chapter in our lives might come with challenges I hadn't fully prepared for. I wanted to confirm Ashley's suspicion just to see her reaction, but I decided against it. Instead, I said, "I don't dislike you. It's just that I've been feeling unwell from adjusting to the new environment." That was partly true. I had been resting at home a lot because I felt tired, and Douglas hadn't even told me about this visit. Why was I here? To sit through their judgmental remarks? Ashley wasted no time accusing me of not liking her. But wasn't it the other way around? How were we supposed to get along when the atmosphere was always like this? Before I could even process her words, Stephanie jumped in sharply, saying, "How can you talk to your mother-in-law like that? Apologize to her right now." I expected Ashley to get angry or scold me, but what she said next left me completely surprised.
"You're right," she said.
"I've been mean, and I'm sorry, Elizabeth. I'm also sorry about the things I said about children. I was being nosy." Her tone wasn't sarcastic or harsh. It was genuinely apologetic. I braced myself, expecting some hidden jab or lecture, but it didn't come. Even Stephanie looked surprised. Then Ashley confessed something that caught me off guard. "All I've ever wanted is to hold a grandchild," she said quietly. She explained that Stephanie's husband was infertile, and Catherine seemed to be having trouble conceiving as well. Because of this, Ashley had pinned all her hopes on Douglas and me. I had known about Stephanie and Catherine's struggles, and hearing this softened my frustration a little. Douglas and I had talked about having children and were considering it, but I didn't like the pressure Ashley was putting on us. I decided to speak up. "Please, just give us some time," I said, lowering my head slightly. "We're thinking about it, but it's not something that can be rushed. I'm sorry if I've upset you." Ashley nodded, and the tension seemed to fade. "Do visit us sometimes," I added softly, trying to bridge the gap between us. After that, Ashley and Stephanie turned their attention back to the TV. Ashley casually remarked, "I like this announcer. She's so energetic and bright." As I watched them chatting and sipping their tea, I felt a small pang of regret. Maybe if I had been more outgoing or approachable, things might have been different between us. It was a fleeting thought, but I couldn't ignore it. For the first time, I felt like there was a chance things could improve. Later that evening, my optimism was crushed. Douglas came home visibly upset. "I heard from Mom that you told her you have no intention of getting along with her." She was crying. Elizabeth. What did you say? He demanded. I was stunned. Earlier, he'd left with a smile, but now he seemed to think I'd caused a disaster. Douglas, there's been a misunderstanding, I tried to explain. I only said it's hard to build a friendship given how things are now. How does that mean I don't want to get along? But Douglas didn't seem convinced. The fragile progress I thought we'd made with Ashley felt like it was unraveling already. I was scared. Douglas now seemed to fully believe Ashley's twisted version of events. The smile he had earlier felt like a lie, and I didn't know how to handle this situation. I tried to explain myself again, but he wasn't convinced. Then, my phone buzzed with a message from Stephanie. It read, "After all the effort of moving here, weren't you prepared to make it work? If you're here with us, you need to be more patient." Douglas glanced at me, and his expression echoed Stephanie's words. I felt overwhelmed. I had moved here because I cared about being with him, not to win over Ashley or Stephanie. Facing Douglas, I looked him in the eye and said, "It's clear that Ashley and the others might never approve of me. Maybe you should consider being with someone she likes more." Before I realized it, the word divorce slipped out of my mouth. For the first time, Douglas looked truly alarmed. "Wait, hold on," he said, bewildered. "How did we jump to divorce? I just want you to get along better with my family." He didn't seem to understand that his family might never fully accept me, no matter what I did. It left me feeling even more confused. But Douglas, to his credit, seemed determined to fix things. The next day, he came home late from work and shared what had happened. He told me he had spoken to Ashley, and she admitted there had been a misunderstanding. She even apologized. "What a fuss," he said casually, as if it was all over now. Then, Douglas mentioned that Ashley's birthday was coming up. "How about we celebrate her birthday at a nice restaurant?" he suggested. The sudden shift from conflict to celebration was hard for me to process. It felt like we had jumped from chaos to pretending everything was fine. But I could see Douglas was trying to make things better, even if the path ahead felt shaky. Douglas suggested that if we made it seem like the dinner was my idea, it might help Ashley see me in a better light. I wasn't sure if Ashley would appreciate the gesture, given her complicated nature, but I agreed to make the reservation. I invited Stephanie and the others, booking a table for 8. Douglas approved of the plan, but as the dinner approached, I felt a growing unease. Douglas had been distant lately. His responses to me were short and indifferent, making me feel isolated. On the night of the dinner, we arrived at the restaurant to find Ashley, Stephanie, and their spouses already seated. The host led Douglas and me to the table, giving us a polite but questioning look that only made my nerves worse. "Happy birthday, Ashley," I said, trying to sound cheerful. But deep down, I wondered if this dinner was really going to improve anything, or if it was just another way for me to feel out of place. I greeted Ashley cheerfully, hoping to ease some of the tension and bridge the gap between us. However, she didn't even acknowledge me. Instead, she turned to everyone else, thanking them for coming to celebrate her birthday. Her deliberate snub stung, and I couldn't help but feel hurt. Stephanie seemed confused by the atmosphere. "I thought this was supposed to be a family gathering," she said, glancing at me with a puzzled expression. Catherine, noticing the tension, looked at me with concern. In that moment, I realized I was being excluded on purpose. Determined not to let it ruin my evening, I decided to keep to myself and leave early. Just as I settled on this plan, a staff member approached our table looking uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, but the reservation was actually made for 7 people, he said. Confused, I replied, "That can't be right. I clearly reserved for 8. Could there be a mistake?" The staff member hesitated, then explained, "About a week ago, we received a call from a gentleman asking to change the reservation to 7. I froze. Slowly, I turned to Douglas, searching for an explanation. His response floored me. "Yes, 7 is correct. Everyone's here now," he said plainly, confirming that he had made the change himself. A wave of disbelief and betrayal washed over me. Douglas's actions spoke volumes. Despite his earlier promises to mend things, his efforts to smooth family tensions had been shallow at best. I felt manipulated and deeply hurt, realizing he had orchestrated this behind my back. Before I could process everything, Douglas turned to me with an accusatory glare. "I heard from Mom that you've been undermining our family," he began, his voice sharp. "She said you've been telling people I don't earn enough, and that I'm insensitive. You had a lot to say, didn't you?" His words hit me like a punch in the gut. I was stunned. It turned out that a week ago, when Douglas had contacted Ashley about the dinner, she had filled his head with lies. Blinded by anger and believing her, he had called the restaurant, pretended to be me, and changed the reservation to 7. The staff, recognizing the family name, hadn't questioned the change. I couldn't believe Douglas had been so easily manipulated. The realization that he had sided with Ashley without even asking me for the truth was deeply unsettling. In that moment, I questioned why I was even there. I confronted Douglas, demanding that he apologize to everyone at the table and reflect on his actions. But instead of apologizing, he did something unexpected. He insisted that his actions were justified. "I just wanted to make sure things went smoothly," he said, as if that excused everything. His refusal to take responsibility made it clear that the distance between us wasn't just physical. It was emotional, and I didn't know how, or if, it could be repaired. I thought about apologizing to my in-laws just to keep the peace, but deep down, I knew I couldn't do it. I hadn't done anything wrong, and I refused to admit to things I never said. Besides, what was the point of a marriage where my husband believed his mother over me? Tears of frustration filled my eyes as I questioned why I had even followed Douglas here. Seeing my distress, Douglas began to panic, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. Ashley, watching everything unfold, had a smug smile on her face, clearly satisfied that her plan was working. Her manipulations had succeeded in driving a wedge between us. I looked at Douglas coldly and said, "Next time, marry someone younger and more obedient. Maybe then you'll have children and be happier." Ashley's response was swift and cutting. "Elizabeth, why don't you just go back to your parents' house? A daughter-in-law is always an outsider. I can't see you as family. You're not charming at all, so please leave quickly." Her words stung, but they also solidified my decision. "I'll leave, even without you telling me," I said firmly. "I'd like to see anyone get along with someone as twisted as you." With that, I turned and walked out of the restaurant. Douglas stayed behind, silent, with his head in his hands. Just as I reached the exit, I heard someone calling my name. I turned to see Catherine and her husband hurrying after me. "Elizabeth, wait," Catherine said, clearly upset. "I can't stand it anymore. Mom and Stephanie haven't changed at all. I knew the gossip about you wasn't true." Catherine's words brought me a small sense of relief. In the middle of all this chaos, someone finally stood up for me. Her acknowledgement of the truth, though brief, felt like a lifeline. "I'm ready to cut ties with all this toxicity," Catherine added, her voice steady and resolute. It was a surprising moment of solidarity, and while it didn't erase the pain of what had just happened, it gave me a glimmer of hope that not everyone in Douglas's family was against me. As I stood there processing Catherine's words, my phone buzzed. Ashley's name flashed on the screen. I sighed, wondering what she wanted now. Before I could decide whether to answer, the name on the screen changed to Douglas's. Catherine and her husband exchanged knowing looks. "Elizabeth, you might want to go back to the restaurant," Catherine said cryptically. "You might see something interesting." Her eyes hinted at a twist I hadn't expected. They left looking oddly satisfied, but I hesitated. Curiosity battled with my need to stay far away from the drama. In the end, curiosity won. When I finally answered Douglas's call, his voice sounded frantic and filled with regret. "Elizabeth, I'm sorry," he said, his tone desperate. "I didn't realize it was all a lie," Douglas blurted out on the phone. "I'll send the divorce papers later," he added hastily, but then his tone changed. "Wait. Can you come back, please? It's a lifetime request." His almost childish plea made me want to laugh, but Catherine's cryptic hint earlier lingered in my mind. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to return to the restaurant. When I arrived, the scene before me was nothing like I had expected. A crowd had gathered around Douglas's table, and at the center of it all was a local TV announcer, Ashley's favorite, speaking into a microphone. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Ashley looked flustered, stumbling over her words as she tried to explain herself.
No, that's not it.
It's a misunderstanding, she stammered. Douglas and Stephanie sat awkwardly, their discomfort written all over their faces. They clearly hadn't anticipated this sudden turn of events. The announcer, holding the microphone with authority, pressed Ashley for answers. You loudly declared in the restaurant that Elizabeth is an outsider and should leave.
What did you mean by that?
Please explain in detail. Ashley's face turned pale, and her usual confidence seemed to evaporate. The tables had turned, and now she was the one under scrutiny. Meanwhile, Catherine's husband and a few others who had been offended earlier had quietly left, wanting no part in the escalating drama. I stood frozen, watching this surreal scene unfold. It took me a moment to piece together what was happening. It seemed that our family conflict had turned into a public spectacle, possibly even being broadcast live. My earlier frustration gave way to a mix of vindication and disbelief. As I tried to make sense of it all, a staff member approached me, noticing my confusion. It's been quite a day, hasn't it? They remarked with a wry smile. They explained that the restaurant had scheduled a live TV recording that day, which explained the announcer's presence. The camera crew and microphones had captured everything, turning our family dinner into an unexpected media event. The realization that our drama had been broadcast for all to see was both shocking and oddly satisfying. Ashley's harsh words, which she had so confidently uttered earlier, were now laid bare for everyone to judge. Just as I stepped aside to gather my thoughts, I noticed the announcer approach Ashley with a smile. Would you mind giving an interview? She asked brightly. Ashley, an avid fan of the announcer, looked thrilled. An interview? Absolutely, she exclaimed, forgetting her earlier embarrassment. The announcer beamed. The topic is daughter-in-law and mother-in-law relationships. Ashley's face faltered for a moment, realizing the irony of the situation. I couldn't help but smirk as I watched her wrestle with her own words. The evening had taken a bizarre turn, but in some strange way, justice had been served. We heard there was a heated argument earlier, and the daughter-in-law left in tears. Can you tell us what happened? The announcer asked, turning the spotlight directly on Ashley. Ashley and Stephanie froze, their faces pale. They were clearly caught off guard and didn't know how to respond. The truth was too embarrassing to admit. They had deliberately manipulated the situation to alienate me. From across the room, Douglas saw me and rushed over, his face full of desperation. Elizabeth, please, he begged. I can't let this shame be known. It was all a misunderstanding. His voice cracked, and he looked completely defeated. But by then, I had no sympathy left for him. Whatever feelings I once had for Douglas had evaporated. Ashley, trying to save face, forced a strange smile and attempted to smooth things over. Oh, we usually call each other Elizabeth. Elizabeth, come here, she called out, waving me over. I walked up slowly, knowing I had nothing left to lose. The announcer directed the microphone toward me. You say you call each other Elizabeth. But how does the daughter-in-law view her mother-in-law? I smiled faintly, my voice calm. I've never been called Elizabeth by her, I said, looking Ashley in the eye. What I've been called, though, is unpatriotic, because I haven't had children yet. Ashley has made it clear she thinks that's reason enough for a divorce. The crowd murmured, and Ashley's smile faltered. I continued, my tone steady. The truth is, Douglas and I haven't felt ready or confident enough to start a family. We haven't even tried in over 2 years. But that's never stopped Ashley from criticizing me. I paused, then added, when I first fell ill and had to take a leave from work, Douglas was supportive. I appreciated that and decided to follow him here, thinking a change of environment might help me recover. But this is the result. I gestured to the scene around us. By then, I felt no sadness, only detachment. As I spoke, I noticed Ashley and Stephanie's expressions. They looked utterly humiliated, their earlier confidence replaced with embarrassment. For the first time all day, I felt a small sense of satisfaction. The announcer, sensing the weight of my words, didn't interrupt. As I glanced at the cameras, I realized this might be broadcast nationwide. Watching Ashley squirm under the scrutiny, I couldn't help but smile. "Well," I said, turning back to Ashley, "since the daughter-in-law is considered an outsider, I guess I should leave."
Goodbye.
I walked out of the restaurant, ignoring the shouts and commotion behind me. The day had been long, chaotic, and emotionally draining, but as I stepped outside, I felt an unexpected sense of freedom. For the first time, I didn't feel weighed down by the drama. I felt lighter, as though I had finally let go of the toxic environment I had tried so hard to endure. And with that, I kept walking, savoring the release of leaving it all behind. I felt a mix of relief and satisfaction after everything that had happened. Even though Ashley and her family managed to prevent the footage from being broadcast, the incident had already caused quite a stir in our local community. The story spread quickly among relatives and acquaintances, becoming the center of gossip and speculation. After the drama, I returned to my room, packed my belongings, and moved back to my parents' house. I sent Douglas the divorce papers, but he took his time responding. Frustrated by the delay, I started considering hiring a lawyer to finalize things. To my surprise, Douglas showed up at my parents' doorstep one day. My father, Gerald, who is usually calm and composed, handled the situation firmly. Douglas apologized sincerely, saying he wanted to cut ties with his family and promising to trust me completely moving forward. But his words felt hollow to me. It was too little, too late. Gerald, visibly upset by the pain Douglas had caused me over the years, didn't hold back. "Why didn't you realize this sooner?" he asked sharply. "What have you done to Elizabeth all these years? Just sign the divorce papers and leave." Douglas's regret was written all over his face. Shaking, he handed over the signed divorce papers. His handwriting was shaky and barely legible, but it didn't matter. The papers were processed without issue, and our marriage was officially over. Not long after, I learned more about the truth behind Stephanie's situation. It turned out that her infertility wasn't caused by her husband as she had claimed, but by her own health issues. This revelation led to her own marriage falling apart. She stopped visiting Ashley and no longer played an active role in the family. Douglas, now divorced, returned to live with Ashley in their small hometown. They likely faced ongoing rumors and judgment from those around them, but I didn't concern myself with their lives anymore. That chapter of my life was finally closed. In the months that followed, my life began to improve. I reconnected with a former classmate from my hometown. We quickly fell in love and got married. Unlike my first marriage, this relationship was filled with happiness and understanding. We soon welcomed a child, a beautiful daughter, and now she's 1 year old. To add to our joy, I'm currently expecting our second child. My new mother-in-law is the polar opposite of Ashley. She is kind, supportive, and treats me with genuine love and respect. She has become a true blessing in my life, offering the care and warmth I never thought I'd experience in a family. Life is unpredictable, but I now feel fulfilled and surrounded by love. The support and happiness I once thought were out of reach are now my reality, and I am endlessly grateful for this new chapter in my life. In front of me stood my parents, still and quiet, as if they were waiting to apologize. My mother finally spoke, her voice shaky and full of desperation. "Thank you for coming all this way," she said, looking down. "We heard you might be able to help save our factory, which is almost bankrupt. We're very grateful." My father spoke too, but he couldn't look me in the eye. It was surprising to learn that the factory they were so desperate to save was the same one where their own daughter, the one they had abandoned in the cold mountains, worked. "Let's talk about business," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "Please lift your heads." When they heard my voice, they both looked up, shocked. Their faces were almost funny, and I couldn't help but laugh a little. "Lauren," they said together, their astonishment clear. And so, my story began. How should I respond to this situation? My name is Lauren Compton. I live in a small city, but the only developed part is near the station. The area where I live is mostly rural, with farms all around. My family used to run a small smithy, where we made and fixed farm tools. But starting from my great-grandfather's time, We began making parts for farm machinery and eventually built a factory on a larger scale. Our family became quite well known in the area. My father, Logan, is the president of Compton Machinery, and my mother, Cheryl, is the executive director. I have an older brother named Jerry, who has always been very smart and the pride of my parents. In our countryside community, it's common for parents to have high expectations for their eldest son, and Jerry lived up to those expectations by attending a prestigious high school. But while my parents showered my brother with attention, I was often ignored. In our traditional way of thinking, daughters are seen as people who will eventually leave the family. My brother, expected to take over the family business, was their focus. Meanwhile, I was left to the side, with no real expectations placed on me. "You're a girl. You can't inherit the family business," my father told me bluntly when I was just in middle school. "Once you finish high school, that's it." Even at that young age, I understood my place. I decided to focus on my studies, even though it was tough for a middle schooler to set such a goal. I had no choice but to keep moving forward. My focus on pushing ahead became my only driving force. My brother and I were so different that it was hard to believe we were related. At school, he was like the captain of a great ship, confident and respected by everyone. I, on the other hand, loved being active and free, running through the countryside like a deer or a goat. If there was one thing I was better at than my brother, it was sports. I was more athletic, but life didn't make things easy for me. Unlike my brother, who seemed naturally gifted, I had to work hard to study, and even then, my grades didn't improve much. My parents were quick to notice this difference. They often mocked me, saying things like, "You're no good. You're nothing like Jerry. Don't you understand your limits?" Their words hurt deeply, but instead of giving up, I felt angry and frustrated. One day, when our school's midterm exam results came back, I was heartbroken. Despite all my hard work, my grades were still bad. I didn't want anyone to see my report card, but my parents insisted. When they looked at it, they laughed and said, "We should have expected this. There's no point in investing in you anymore. It's hard to believe you're Jerry's sibling. Something must be wrong." As I sat there, being scolded by my parents, I silently prayed for the moment to end. Just then, my brother stepped in. He wasn't great at expressing his feelings to our parents, but he was always there for me. "It might partly be my fault that our parents are so hard on you," he said, "but I'm here for you. Always." His words felt like a warm hug, and I couldn't stop my tears. His support gave me strength, and I felt like I could face any challenge with him by my side. With his help, I slowly improved my studies. When I entered my second year of middle school, my brother passed the entrance exam for a prestigious university in the city and left home. His old room became empty, but his absence only made the comparisons to him even harsher. My brother, with his natural talents, seemed to succeed effortlessly, while I struggled in his shadow, still trying to find my own path. I enjoyed running far more than studying and joined the school's track team. Running had always been my passion, and I decided to chase my dream of becoming a long-distance runner. My goal was to get a recommendation from a prestigious school known for its relay team. While my brother was brilliant in academics, he wasn't good at sports. In this one area, I felt I was better than him. But even so, my parents didn't seem to care. They were only interested in his high grades, not the speed I could run. No matter how hard I worked, my efforts went unnoticed. My parents' attention and affection were always reserved for my brother, who continued to excel in his studies. When my brother turned 19, it was a big deal for my parents. They planned an extravagant celebration for his birthday. My mother even said, "Let's get him an expensive watch. If you can't afford to buy such a gift, don't even think about going to university." Her words stung, especially since I didn't have the money to give him anything fancy. As expected, when the day came, my family and relatives gathered at a well-known restaurant for a grand feast. Meanwhile, I was left at home, as though I didn't belong there. My mother dismissed me, saying, "Jerry deserves this because he's excellent. All you do is obsess over running. Being there would only make you feel worse." Her words hurt deeply. After they left, I sat alone at home and made myself instant noodles. As I poured hot water into the bowl, the steam rising reminded me of how empty and lonely I felt. Tears streamed down my face as sadness and frustration overwhelmed me. During that time, my brother returned home for summer break. He had graduated and started working at a top company, already carrying the responsibilities of an adult. He seemed more mature than ever. One day, he brought me a surprise. This is an older model, but it's fast enough for browsing the internet. Give it a try. It might even help you with your studies, he said with a kind smile, handing me a laptop. Then, he gave me a book and said, "Try using this too. I think you'll find it interesting." The book was a beginner's guide to programming. That moment marked the start of something new for me. It was my first step into the world of technology. Although I wasn't very good at math and science at first, I discovered that creating my own programs was surprisingly fun. I started using the laptop my brother gave me all the time. Every time one of my programs worked, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Slowly, I began to see a path I wanted to follow. It wasn't entirely clear yet, but the idea of a future in programming was starting to take shape in my mind. However, one day, my dream was suddenly crushed by my father. "Are you playing on the computer again instead of studying?" he asked sharply. "I'm programming, not playing," I replied, trying to stay calm. "Don't lie. You're just gaming on that thing," he accused me angrily. Frustrated by his misunderstanding, I snapped back, "People with old-fashioned ideas like you don't understand how to use computers." That comment only made him angrier. "What nonsense are you talking about? Don't speak to me like that, Lauren," he shouted. Suddenly, he grabbed the laptop and, before I could stop him, threw it out the window. "Why would you do that?" I screamed, horrified. "You're still in high school and always playing games. Maybe now, with that computer gone, you'll finally focus on your studies," he said, laughing as if he had done me a favor. I ran outside to where the laptop had landed. It was completely destroyed. The screen was shattered, the case was cracked, and it wouldn't turn on anymore. My heart sank as I picked up the broken pieces. The laptop, a precious gift from my brother, and the tool that had sparked my interest in programming, was now just junk. Without any money to repair it, I felt like my dream was slipping away. Standing there with the broken laptop in my hands, I was filled with despair. My brother's thoughtful gift, which had given me hope for the future, was gone. I didn't know how I could continue. The next morning, still weighed down by sadness, I walked to school. That's when a friend noticed my mood and made a suggestion that sparked a tiny bit of hope. "Why don't you use the school's computers? The teacher might let you," they said. I decided to ask, and to my relief, the teacher agreed. From then on, the school's computer room became my safe haven. After class, I'd head there, where a reliable desktop computer was waiting for me. It wasn't fancy or portable like my laptop, but it was sturdy and dependable. That computer became my foundation, giving me a way to keep learning and holding on to the dream I had almost lost. I started spending more and more time in the school computer room. On weekends, one of my teachers, who noticed how passionate I was, offered extra help. Programming became my focus throughout high school, and I worked hard to improve my skills little by little. During the summer of my sophomore year, my brother suggested I join a summer course in Chicago. I saved up for the travel expenses by working part-time jobs. I stayed in the dormitory of the company where my brother worked, dedicating my days to the course and spending my evenings learning from my brother and his unique friend, Brandon. "Brandon's a bit quirky, but he's not a bad guy," my brother said with a grin. "He's just not used to being around girls, since he went to an all-boys school. So don't tease him too much." Brandon, pretending to look offended, replied, "What are you talking about? I've had plenty of interactions with girls." "Oh, really? When was that?" my brother teased. During the folk dance in elementary school," Brandon said, his face turning red. We couldn't help but burst into laughter at this innocent and funny moment. Brandon's honesty and quirks added a unique charm to that summer. That summer became a turning point for me. With the encouragement of my brother and Brandon's guidance, my love for programming grew even stronger. By the end of the summer, I felt like I had taken a big step into the world of programming, and it completely captivated me. Brandon was different from my brother. He was polite, refined, and carried himself like someone from a well-mannered family. Although he was a bit eccentric, there was no malice in him, and I found his personality oddly endearing. As I entered the summer of my final year in high school, something unexpected happened. My brother, who had apologized earlier for the destruction of my laptop, returned home during the break with a surprise. He handed me a used laptop and said with a mischievous smile, "This is from Brandon. He's pretty well off, so I asked him if he had any computers lying around, and he gave me this one. He wanted you to have it as a gift." "Why would he do that?" I asked, my face turning red. "I don't know," my brother teased. "Maybe he likes you." "Stop saying nonsense." I protested, but my flustered reaction only made my brother laugh harder as he playfully tapped me on the head. That laptop became my lifeline. It wasn't just a computer, it was a symbol of the support I'd received from my brother and Brandon, and it pushed me to work even harder toward my dreams. My brother gave me plenty of advice, and my programming skills improved a lot. One day, he said, "I never thought you'd get so into programming." "Yeah, it's really interesting," I replied. "Sometimes things don't work because of a small mistake in the calculations, but solving the problem is so exciting." Programming wasn't just a fun activity for me, it had become my passion. Seeing my own programs come to life was a joy that couldn't be described in words. Driven by this passion, I made a big decision. I decided to leave home, skip university, and take a job in the city at a tech company. With a new computer in hand, I felt ready to move forward and keep improving my programming skills. My journey had only just begun. One cold winter day, as I was preparing for my new life, my parents called me unexpectedly. Normally, their conversations weren't pleasant, so I wasn't hopeful. But this time, it was different. "Let's go on a family trip," my father suggested. Family trips were a distant memory from my childhood, so I was surprised. My uncle had won a hotel voucher in a lottery, and we decided to use it. I felt a bit excited, especially since my brother would be joining us. On the day of the trip, we drove to a hotel in a snowy area, with my father at the wheel. My parents seemed unusually cheerful during the drive, chatting mostly about my brother's job and my father's struggles with his factory. As usual, I was left out of the conversation. When we arrived, the hotel was much fancier than I had expected. We relaxed by the pool and enjoyed delicious meals together. But something about my parents' sudden kindness felt off. It didn't seem genuine. Late that night, I woke up to use the bathroom. On my way back, I overheard my parents talking in hushed voices from their room. "We can't keep spending money on her anymore," my mother said. "If we leave her behind, she'll understand," my father replied. "Yes, it's time for a big house cleaning," she agreed. I froze in place, my heart pounding. They were planning to abandon me. I felt like I was meant to be abandoned, and accepting it seemed like the only choice I had. With a heavy heart, I left home. The drive back was quiet, with hardly any conversation. Maybe everyone was just tired. I was supposed to be dropped off at the station and then head straight to the dormitory at my new job. Suddenly, my father spoke up. "I feel like having a coffee. Is there a vending machine nearby?" My brother answered, "There's a parking area up ahead. We can get coffee there." My father smiled, seeming unusually cheerful. "All right, let's stop there for a break," he said. Soon, we reached the parking area, and my father turned to me. "Lauren, go buy us some coffee." As expected, I got out of the car and walked to the vending machines. I chose hot coffee for my father and brother, tea for my mother, and grabbed a milk tea for myself. But as I turned to head back, I saw something that stopped me in my tracks. My father unloading my suitcase from the car. "Well, this is goodbye," he said casually. "Driving you all the way to the station takes too much time and fuel." I stood there in shock. "Wait, isn't the station still far from here?" "You can figure it out. Run or walk, you were on the track team, weren't you? You should have the energy," he said coldly. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice trembling. "It's time you managed on your own." "All right, cleaning complete," he added, his words cutting deep. "You really were just a piece of trash getting in the way." I looked at my brother, hoping for support, but he said nothing. Instead, He gently placed my coat on top of my suitcase. Standing in the snowy parking lot, I watched as the car drove away, disappearing into the distance. Tears blurred my vision, but somewhere in my heart, I realized this was the start of something new. My old life was over, but maybe, just maybe, this was the first step toward a fresh chapter. 15 years later, I returned to my hometown. A lot had changed. I was now thriving as a project leader at a successful company. The reason for my visit was work-related. There was a project at the local factory. Still, returning to this place stirred up a mix of excitement and old, painful memories. As the familiar factory came into view, I heard a voice that made my heart skip a beat. Lauren. I turned to see my brother stepping out of a car, smiling and waving as he walked toward me. I was worried you might get lost, my brother said as we approached the factory. The scenery has changed a lot. No worries, I replied. The GPS worked perfectly. Without missing a beat, he started talking about work. About this project, the client has high expectations, so we need to be ready. I smirked playfully. Let's see how long you can keep that energy. Don't underestimate me, he shot back. I've toughened up a lot in the city. You've really grown stronger, he said, clearly impressed. It's because I've been pushing myself, I replied. You naturally get stronger when you work hard. This reunion wasn't just by chance. It was all because of this project. My brother, with his experience in a large corporation, had started his own company, using his expertise in mechanical engineering to create innovative products. His work had begun to catch attention in the market, offering hope to struggling businesses. Now, our hometown factory was in trouble, facing a serious financial crisis. That's why my brother had reached out to me, proposing a new project to help turn things around. Let's get going, he said, and I nodded, gathering my thoughts as we headed toward the factory. As we opened the doors, a cold draft greeted us, carrying the faint scent of the past. It brought back a wave of memories, bittersweet and distant. This place wasn't just a factory, it was where I had grown up. The air felt like a quiet awakening, stirring emotions I hadn't felt in years. Then, as if on cue, the curtain of a long-forgotten play lifted. In front of us stood my parents, motionless, their expressions unreadable. Thank you for coming all this way, my mother finally said, her voice low, her eyes looking down in desperation. We heard you might be able to help our nearly bankrupt factory, and we're deeply grateful. My father added, still avoiding eye contact, we truly appreciate it. There's no need to be so formal, my brother said, his tone calm but firm. No, my mother insisted. We must show our sincerity to you, our important guests from Brandon Industries, all the way from Chicago. As they continued speaking, I decided to steer the conversation. Let's focus on business matters, I said, keeping my tone professional. At the sound of my voice, they froze. Their bodies stiffened slightly, and they slowly raised their heads to look at me. That voice that's familiar, they murmured, their faces a mix of confusion and disbelief. Finally, recognition dawned. You know it can't be. Lauren? Is it really you? I stood there, watching their shocked expressions, and couldn't help but smile slightly. Yes, it was me, Lauren. I couldn't help but laugh as they finally realized who I was. Yes, it's me, Lauren, I said. The one you left behind in the snowy mountains. They looked stunned. How are you here? We were told someone from Brandon Industries would be coming. Well, I'm the one they sent, I explained. I'm a project leader at Brandon Industries. Brandon's father is the president. After you abandoned me, Brandon, who is a friend of Jerry, stepped in to help me. My brother had seen this coming and made arrangements to protect me. I paused, looking directly at them. It wasn't easy, but I've built a life for myself. I've established a career, and I'm married now. My husband is a department head at Brandon Industries. The president personally assigned me to lead this factory's rejuvenation project. Do you understand now? My parents stood frozen, and I continued, at the time, my brother was furious with what you planned to do. Before that trip, he talked to Brandon and prepared for the worst. On the day it happened, my brother gave me a note that read, "Our parents intend to leave you behind. If anything happens, call this number." As expected, When it happened, I called the number. Brandon answered right away. He later admitted, a little embarrassed, that he'd taken paid leave in advance just in case I needed help. He came to pick me up immediately. I paused, the memories still vivid in my mind. When he arrived, I told him how heartbreaking it was to be abandoned like that. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I spoke. Brandon didn't say much. He just quietly loaded my luggage into his car and drove me away from that snowy place. I smiled softly. After that, I started working at a company in Chicago, which turned out to be a subsidiary of the company run by Brandon's father. With the support of both Brandon and my brother, I worked hard and studied at the same time. A year later, I enrolled in a night university, balancing work and education. After graduating, I transferred to the main company, where I could use my specialized knowledge. I took on a role in construction management, and over time I built my career. Looking back, I added, as Brandon got promoted, I began working closely with him. While leading a project under his direction, my respect for him gradually turned into love. Eventually, he proposed, and we got married. I stood there, facing my parents, their shocked faces unable to hide their guilt. My journey had come full circle, and now I was the one offering them a lifeline. I kept working and got involved in a project that focused on bringing production back to local factories. Due to the strong currency and rising labor costs overseas, manufacturing abroad was becoming less profitable. Companies started looking for cost-effective and efficient options, leading to a renewed interest in domestic production. While searching for a new factory location to match these trends, I received unexpected news from my brother. Our family's factory was in serious financial trouble. The factory, which used to supply machine parts to large companies, had been lowering its prices to compete. But this strategy had pushed it into a corner financially. Taking this situation seriously, my brother and I decided to visit the factory together. When we arrived, my parents' attitude changed completely. Seeing me as a representative of Brandon Industries, they suddenly became confident. Now that Lauren is here, we have nothing to worry about, my father said. It's only natural for a daughter to help her family in tough times. I looked at them calmly and said, I think you might be misunderstanding something. I don't see you as my parents anymore. My relationship with this factory will only be business-related. Their expressions changed, and my mother snapped. How can you say such a thing? How can you be so heartless? I didn't raise you to be this way. Although they were angry, I remained composed. The current state of this factory is the result of your poor management. Because of this, we will be replacing the entire management team with staff from headquarters. In other words, your time here is over. My father's face turned red with frustration. You can't do that. The factory can be sold to pay off some of the debts. I can still manage it after that, right? I shook my head firmly. I cannot trust this factory's future to you. What do you plan to do about the remaining debts? This rescue effort is only happening because of Jerry's hard work. As for your lives going forward, that's your challenge to face. Good luck. My brother and I turned and walked away, leaving our parents sitting on the floor, powerless. Well, that's finally settled, my brother said.
It's not really the end, I replied.
It's just the beginning. This place will become a domestic production hub soon. With the production management system you developed and the new machine tools I've designed, my brother added, we can aim to be the best in the country, right? Not just the best in the country, I said, smiling. We're aiming to be the best in the world. Sharing a laugh, we both felt hopeful about the future. As expected, our parents sold the factory, but the money wasn't enough to cover all their debts. Even so, we were ready to rebuild from the ground up, fueled by a shared vision of success. I heard my parents are now working in a freezing place. They've asked us for money several times, but we've ignored them completely. Still, I couldn't just do nothing. So, I decided to send them some disposable hand warmers I had collected during my college years. It was a small, ironic way of giving back, considering they once left me out in the cold. Meanwhile, the factory we purchased has been completely transformed. After renovations, it's now thriving and full of new energy. The factory has centralized everything from manufacturing to inventory management and shipping. It has created jobs for the local community and gained significant appreciation. Together with my husband, I've been working on new projects to expand our division even further. In the future, we plan to focus on helping American companies expand into overseas markets and building strong business partnerships. Our lives are busy, but we always make time to take a break a few times a year at that distant hotel. Every year, when the snow starts to fall, I think about that parking area and feel a tug in my heart. This year, I found myself visiting the spot again. "What are you thinking about?" my husband asked gently. "Reflecting on the past again." "Yes," I replied, smiling softly. "This place holds so many unforgettable memories." "Me too," he said, smiling back. "It all started here." I laughed. "I remember that day. Even though it was the middle of winter, your face was as red as a boiled octopus." "You're one to talk," he teased. "Your face was so red, you looked like a little kid." We looked at each other and burst out laughing. "Thank you." "I love you," I said, feeling a warmth in my heart. "No, thank you," he replied with a smile. Life, I thought, is like a book made up of many stories. Moments like these form the chapters of our story as a couple. And this chapter? It's one of the most beautiful. Running a hotel wasn't just a job for me, it was my whole life. My name's Sarah, and this hotel was my world. That was until he walked in. You couldn't miss him. A young man in a suit that practically shouted wealth. His eyes were glued to an expensive phone as he checked in, flashing a smile that could sweep you off your feet. "Good evening, I'm Jacob," he said, his voice smooth and confident. "I'll be staying for a couple of nights. Anything exciting going on around here?" I found myself smiling back, caught a little off guard by his charm. "Well, Jacob, this city's full of surprises." "Depends on what you're looking for," I replied, handing him his key. Our conversation was short, but it left an impression. Maybe it was the curiosity in his eyes, or the way he seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. He didn't stay long, but when he checked out, he left a note. "Enjoyed our talk. Care to continue it over dinner?" it said. I hesitated. I wasn't used to mixing work and my personal life, but there was something about him that intrigued me. I decided to take a chance. We met at a cozy restaurant, the kind of place where the buzz of chatter and clinking glasses made you feel like the rest of the world didn't exist. "You've really got that hotel running like clockwork, don't you, Sarah?" Jacob said with a smile as we settled into our seats. I laughed, feeling unexpectedly at ease. "I guess you could say I've had plenty of practice." The evening flew by as we talked about everything and nothing. Jacob seemed like an open book, sharing stories about his travels and business ventures. When the conversation shifted to me, I found myself opening up in a way I rarely did. I told him about losing my parents and how it had been just me and my sister Camille against the world since I was 24. "That's a lot to handle, Sarah," he said, his expression softening. His eyes held a mix of admiration and something else I couldn't quite figure out. I shrugged it off, saying, "We all deal with the cards we're given, right? Camille has always been my top priority. Our parents left us a little money, and I've worked hard to grow it bit by bit." Jacob nodded, looking impressed. "That's really something," he said thoughtfully. As the evening went on, he added, "You've got a good head on your shoulders." I realized I hadn't laughed this much in ages. But when I tried to ask him about his family, he smoothly changed the subject. "My parents and I don't see eye to eye," he said, a shadow passing over his face. "Let's just say they have their way of seeing the world, and I have mine." I didn't push for more. Everyone has their own struggles and stories, and I didn't want to make him uncomfortable. As the night came to an end, I found myself wishing it wouldn't. There was something about Jacob that made me feel alive, like I hadn't in years. Life with Jacob became a whirlwind. Every day was full of surprises, and every moment felt special. He had this way of turning even the simplest things into unforgettable memories. Whether it was a casual dinner or a quiet walk, he made everything feel magical. One evening, as we sat in our favorite little cafe with its dim lights and cozy corners, I said, "Jacob, I can't believe how fast everything is happening." He reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "Sarah, when something feels right, why wait?" I've never been more certain of anything in my life, he said, his voice steady and his eyes locked on mine. I know, I replied, but it's all happening so quickly. It's a lot to take in. The day of the wedding. He gently squeezed my hand. I get it, Sarah, but trust me. I'm here for the long haul. I want to build a life with you, a future. And I want to start by making this wedding day the most incredible day of our lives. The way he talked about the wedding, with so much excitement and certainty, was hard to resist. He painted a picture of a celebration so grand, it took my breath away. Imagine it, Sarah, he said, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. A ceremony no one will forget. A day that celebrates our love. It's going to be perfect. And then he smiled, leaning closer. Just wait until the honeymoon. I asked him, feeling both curious and a little nervous. You mentioned something about the most expensive hotel in the world. His smile grew wider. Yes, it's all part of the plan. But I need you to trust me. Let's take this leap together. Your savings for the wedding, my funds for the honeymoon, and our future home. We'll make this a reality. I hesitated. The practical side of me wanted to be careful, but when I looked into his eyes, filled with love and promise, I felt my doubts fade. I nodded slowly. Okay, Jacob. Let's do it. Let's make this wedding a day to remember. The weeks flew by, as wedding planning completely took over our lives. Jacob was unstoppable, taking charge of every detail to make sure our day would be nothing short of extraordinary. Watching him so focused and determined made me fall even deeper in love. Jacob, you're amazing. The way you're handling everything, I don't even know how to thank you. I told him one evening as we went through the guest list and talked about the extravagant menu he had planned. He pulled me close, wrapping his arms around me. Sarah, seeing you happy is all the thanks I need. This wedding is just the start. Our life together will be even more beautiful. But even with all the excitement, doubt would creep in at times, whispering questions late at night. Was I moving too fast? Was I letting the romance sweep me away? Every time those thoughts came up, Jacob was there to reassure me. His words and promises were like an anchor, keeping me steady in the storm of uncertainty. The wedding preparations filled my days, choosing cakes, flowers, and decorations. But in the middle of all the chaos, I realized I needed Camille. She wasn't just my sister. She was my rock, my confidant. Ever since we lost our parents, it had been just the two of us against the world. Her opinion meant everything to me, especially now. I picked up the phone and called her, hoping she could take a break from her job at the cafe. Hey, Camille. Think you can leave the aprons and coffee smells behind for a day? I could really use some help with tulle and satin, I joked, my voice full of hope. Camille's laughter came through the phone, light and familiar. For you, sis? I'll trade coffee stains for bridal trains any day. Give me an hour to finish up here, and I'm all yours. The bridal shop felt like a dream, filled with white and ivory gowns that seemed to flow like waterfalls of lace and silk. As I tried on dress after dress, Camille's presence kept me calm in the whirlwind of satin and sequins. That one, Sarah, it's like it was made for you, Camille said, her eyes lighting up as I stepped out of the dressing room wearing a gown that felt perfect. I turned to look at my reflection, the dress fitting every curve just right and flowing softly to the floor. You think so? I don't know, I feel like a real bride, I said, a smile spreading across my face. Camille's grin matched mine, but for a brief moment, I caught something in her expression, a shadow, quick and troubling. Before I could ask, she grabbed a dress off the rack. Mind if I try this one on? Just for fun, she asked, holding up a gown that shimmered with every move. I laughed, surprised and amused. Planning to elope, are you? Or is there some mystery man you've been hiding from me? Camille laughed too, but it wasn't her usual carefree laugh. There was something else there, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Oh, Sarah, you know me, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. But a girl can dream, right? She joked, though her eyes quickly darted away as if to hide something. The rest of the day was filled with laughter and the soft rustle of silk, but I couldn't ignore the shift in Camille's mood. Her bubbly self seemed to fade at times, replaced by moments of distraction. "Everything okay, Camille? You seem a little off today," I asked gently, feeling a twinge of worry. She waved her hand dismissively, brushing off my concerns. "It's nothing, really, just the chaos at the cafe. You know how it gets," she said with a quick smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. As we left the bridal shop, the weight of whatever she was hiding hung between us, creating an uneasy tension I couldn't ignore. I wanted to believe it was just pre-wedding stress or maybe a tough day at work, but deep down, I had a feeling it was something more. Something bigger. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The excitement of finding the perfect wedding dress had been replaced by worry about Camille's strange behavior. She'd always been like an open book to me, but now it felt like some pages were missing, with secrets hidden between the lines. As the wedding day got closer, the happiness I should have felt was clouded by a growing unease. Camille and I had always faced life together, but now it felt like there was a wall between us, built with unanswered questions and things unsaid. I had no idea that the answers to those questions were about to turn my whole world upside down. It started like any other day, or so I thought. Jacob had left his phone buzzing on the kitchen counter as I cleaned up. The constant notifications caught my attention, a nagging reminder that something wasn't quite right. Surprisingly, the phone wasn't even locked. That alone made my stomach twist, but what I found when I looked was worse than anything I could have imagined. The messages between Jacob and Camille hit me like a punch to the gut. Each word felt like a knife, cutting deeper and deeper. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning to push me aside, like I meant nothing. Years of love and trust with Camille crumbled in an instant. I read her message over and over, the one where she confessed to Jacob that she was pregnant with his child. My vision blurred as tears filled my eyes. Can't believe we pulled this off. She's such a fool, falling for every lie. And now with the baby, we can finally be together, just as we planned, she had written. The world around me seemed to spin, like I was trapped in a storm of lies and betrayal. Jacob's reply was just as cruel, if not worse. "Love you, babe. Can't wait to see her humiliated and out of the picture. She's just a naive cash cow. This wedding will be perfect, thanks to her money. After that, we'll finally have our real life together." I sat there, the phone heavy in my trembling hands. A storm of emotions swirled inside me: betrayal, anger, disbelief. But beneath it all, something else began to grow. A cold, unshakable determination. They thought they could use me, lie to me, and throw me away like I didn't matter. But they were wrong. I wasn't about to let them destroy me. They were going to learn what happens when you underestimate Sarah Anderson. When Jacob came back into the room, his carefree attitude felt like a slap in the face. "Hey, babe, did I miss any important calls?" he asked casually, picking up his phone with a relaxed smile. I forced a smile, even though my stomach churned with anger. "Nope, just the usual stuff." "Busy day," I replied, keeping my voice calm and steady despite the storm inside me. Jacob gave me that same charming smile, the one I now knew was just a mask. "As always, but nothing's more important than coming back to you," he said, leaning in for a kiss. I had to fight every instinct not to pull away. From that moment on, I played my role as the clueless fiancé perfectly. I smiled, nodded, and went along with all the wedding plans. But behind the scenes, I was carefully plotting my revenge against the 5 people who had betrayed me so deeply. Every day felt like a test of my patience, a balancing act between acting the part and holding back the rage inside me. But I wouldn't let them see me break. I was waiting for the perfect moment, and when it came, they would feel the full weight of what they had done to me. At night, as I lay in bed, the images of Jacob and Camille's deceitful faces haunted me. Their betrayal was burned into my mind. I made a silent promise to myself they would pay for this. Their twisted little game would end, and it would be their downfall. I was no longer just the heartbroken fiancé. I was the one plotting their undoing. My revenge would be precise, careful, and oh, so satisfying. The days leading up to the wedding felt surreal. On the surface, everything was perfect: the flowers, the guest list, the dress. But underneath, a storm of anger and betrayal was brewing. Jacob stayed the same, all smiles and affection, completely unaware of the disaster waiting for him. "Sarah, everything's coming together so beautifully. This wedding is going to be the talk of the town," he said one evening as we went over the final details. I nodded, my smile polished and fake. "Yes, it's going to be a day to remember," I replied, knowing full well the meaning behind my words was something he could never imagine. Facing Camille was harder. She was the sister I had once loved and protected, but now she felt like a stranger to me. Everything she said, everything she did, was a painful reminder of her betrayal. Still, I kept my mask on, pretending to be the same loving sister who didn't know about the knife she'd driven into my back. "Sarah, you're handling everything so well. I don't know how you do it," Camille said one day as we worked on the seating arrangements. I smiled at her, the perfect picture of calm. "It's all about making sure the day is unforgettable," I said, my words hiding a truth she would never see coming. I looked at her, the sister I thought I knew, and forced a laugh. "Oh, Camille, you know me. I've always been good at organizing chaos," I said, the irony of my words not lost on me. As the wedding day got closer, the tension grew heavier, like walking a tightrope while trying not to fall. Jacob kept his phone close now, his conversations quiet and rushed, but it didn't matter. I already knew everything I needed to know. The morning of the wedding was clear and sunny, the kind of day everyone dreams of. But for me, it was the perfect setting for what I knew would be a beautiful disaster. As I got ready, the reflection in the mirror showed a calm, serene bride. But beneath the veil and makeup, I was a woman on a mission, no longer a pawn in their twisted game. "Camille's running late, huh?" Jacob said casually as he adjusted his tie. I met his eyes in the mirror, careful not to let anything slip. "Yes, but she'll be here. She wouldn't miss this for the world," I replied, my words laced with double meaning. He nodded, completely clueless. "Well, she's always been a bit unpredictable. But today is about us, Sarah. Our new beginning." I turned to face him, my smile calm and steady, hiding the storm inside me. "Yes, Jacob. A new beginning," I said, bracing myself for what was about to unfold. As I walked down the aisle, the eyes of our friends and family were on me, their smiles warm and full of joy. They had no idea what was coming. This was the calm before the storm, and I knew the moment of truth was just around the corner. Everything was in place, the vows, the guests, the perfect setting. But this wasn't going to end the way anyone expected. Standing next to Jacob in front of the priest, my heart pounded with a mix of fear and determination. The vows, meant to promise forever, were about to shatter in the most dramatic way possible. The guests, oblivious to the chaos beneath the surface, watched us with smiles and tears in their eyes. But then, something happened that no one could have predicted. Camille appeared. She stormed down the aisle, dressed in a bridal gown almost identical to mine. Her eyes met mine, but there was no love, no sisterly connection. Instead, there was a cold, sharp determination that sent a chill through me. "Move aside, Sarah," she said, her voice cutting through the room. "I'm the one who deserves to be here. Jacob loves me, and I'm carrying his child." "I'm carrying his child," Camille declared, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. The room erupted into whispers and gasps as the guests exchanged confused and disbelieving glances. Jacob, instead of showing shock or regret, let out a hearty laugh, dropping the mask he had so carefully worn. "Well said, Camille. Sarah, you've been a good host, but this is where your part ends. Why don't you join the audience? This is Camille's moment now," he said, his words dripping with mockery and arrogance. Their betrayal, so public and cruel, sent a shockwave through the room. The audacity of it left the guests frozen in disbelief. But as the weight of the situation hit me, I did something no one expected. Not Jacob, not Camille, not even myself. I smiled. I looked at Jacob, then at Camille, and said, "Of course, why not? I wouldn't want to miss the show. After all, I did pay for it." My voice was calm, steady, masking the storm raging inside me. Camille and Jacob exchanged uneasy glances, clearly thrown off by my response. This wasn't the reaction they had expected. The guests were just as confused, their eyes darting between us as they tried to make sense of the surreal scene unfolding before them. I walked gracefully to an empty seat among the guests and sat down, my head held high. The whispers around me grew louder. What's she up to? Is she really going to let this happen? The questions buzzed through the crowd like bees, but I stayed serene, a statue in the middle of the chaos. Jacob and Camille, now standing together at the altar, looked unsettled. My calm demeanor had cracked the confidence in their plan to humiliate me. This wasn't playing out the way they'd hoped. "What's your game, Sarah? Why are you so calm?" Jacob asked, his voice a mix of confusion and unease. I met his gaze, my smile unwavering. "No game, Jacob. Just enjoying the fruits of my labor. Please go ahead." "I'm eager to see how this all turns out," I replied, my words sharp and deliberate, like a knife wrapped in velvet. The ceremony continued, but the atmosphere was different now. The tension in the room was palpable, the guests caught between shock and anticipation. They couldn't tell if they were witnessing a wedding or the opening act of a dramatic disaster. As Camille and Jacob exchanged vows, their words felt hollow, a mockery of the sacred promises they were meant to represent. I sat there, surrounded by friends and family who struggled to comprehend what they were seeing. Inside me, the fire of betrayal burned, but my composure never wavered. They thought they'd won. Little did they know, this was only the beginning of my plan. I knew this was just the start. The real drama was yet to unfold, and Camille and Jacob, in their arrogance, had unknowingly set themselves up for their own downfall. As the priest asked if anyone objected, the doors burst open with a loud bang. A woman, older and worn, stormed in, her eyes blazing with fury. "Stop this wedding right now," she demanded, her voice slicing through the silence like a knife. Jacob's face turned ghostly pale, his eyes wide with panic. "Sabrina? What are you doing here?" he stammered, his polished facade crumbling in an instant. Sabrina, Jacob's legal wife, as I had uncovered, marched straight to the altar. "I'm here to stop you from making an even bigger fool of yourself and these people," she said, her voice firm. Then she turned to me with a sympathetic look. "Sarah, you deserve to know the truth." The guests broke into murmurs, the scene unfolding in front of them more gripping than anything they'd ever seen. Camille clutched her stomach, her face frozen in shock and fear. Sabrina didn't hold back. "Jacob is a liar and a cheat. His investments failed, and he's drowning in debt. He's been using all of you to try and save himself," she said, her voice steady and loud. "And Camille, you poor girl, you're just another pawn in his twisted game." The room erupted into chaos. Guests stood up, their whispers growing louder with each passing second. Jacob tried to speak, but the uproar drowned out his voice. I rose to my feet, my heart pounding, but my voice stayed calm and strong. "There's more," I announced, my words cutting through the noise. The room fell silent again, every eye on me. I hired a private investigator after I found out about Jacob and Camille's affair. Not only is Jacob married and drowning in debt, but he's also been hiding a child, a daughter he's never supported. Camille's face crumpled, her expression shifting from shock to devastation. "Jacob, is this true? Tell me she's lying," she pleaded, her voice breaking. Jacob stood there, pale and defeated, with no words left to defend himself. His web of lies and betrayal had unraveled completely, leaving him exposed for all to see. But the final blow was still to come. As the guests tried to process the revelations, 3 stern figures entered the room: Jacob's parents. I had contacted them and told them everything, and now they were here to confront their son. Jacob's father, a man of few words but great authority, stepped forward. His voice, filled with disappointment and anger, cut through the tension like a blade. "Jacob, you are no son of mine. Your actions today and in the past have shown your true character. You are cut off from this family and our fortune. The room fell into an uneasy silence as Jacob's face turned from pale to ashen, the weight of his ruined schemes sinking in. The game was over, and he had lost everything. I looked at Jacob, Camille, and the broken dreams they had tried to build on lies. The pain of their betrayal still hurt, but as I stood there on what was supposed to be my happiest day, I realized this wasn't the end of my story. It was the start of something new. In the days that followed, I found myself in court, seeking justice for everything Jacob had done. The courtroom felt like a different world, where my pain and humiliation were turned into legal arguments and stacks of paperwork. Jacob, you didn't just break a promise. You shattered trust and took advantage of my kindness, I said firmly, my voice steady and clear. You owe me more than an apology. You owe me compensation for turning my life upside down. The judge's gavel came down, the sharp sound cutting through the tense silence. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff. The defendant is hereby ordered to pay $93,000 in damages for the emotional distress and financial loss caused, the judge declared. His words were like a balm to my wounded spirit. As I left the courtroom, the heavy weight of the past months started to lift. Justice had been served, but I knew the journey to healing had only just begun. Jacob's troubles didn't stop with me. Sabrina, his legal wife, was filled with anger and hurt. She filed her own case against him, demanding compensation for his betrayal and neglect of their child. The once confident, smooth-talking man was now tangled in a web of his own lies, with no way out. As for Camille, my sister, the person I had loved and trusted the most, she was left alone and abandoned. Jacob had fled the city, leaving her to deal with the mess they had created. She was pregnant and terrified, a far cry from the carefree, happy girl she used to be. One day, she came to me, her eyes filled with tears. "Sarah, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm lost, and I don't know what to do," she pleaded. I looked at her, the sister I had once done anything for. My heart ached, but the pain of her betrayal was too fresh, too deep. "Camille, you are my family, my blood. But what you did isn't something I can just forgive or forget. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them, just like I'm living with mine," I said quietly. The distance between us wasn't just physical. It was a deep canyon of betrayal and hurt, too wide and too deep to ever bridge again. Life went on, but the scars from those painful months stayed with me. They were a reminder of what I had been through, of how I had survived, and of the strength I never knew I had. I focused on rebuilding my life, finding comfort in the simple things. I had loved, lost, trusted, and been betrayed. But through it all, I survived. Looking back at everything, I realized the most important journey wasn't about others. It was the one I was taking within myself. It was a journey of healing, finding my strength again, and learning how to trust and love once more.
Growing up, I always felt like I was invisible at home. My parents seemed to care only about my sister. It was always, "Your sister needs this," or "Your sister wants that." She was the center of their world, and I was just there in the background. But one day, when my parents decided to skip one of the biggest moments of my life, something changed inside me. That was the day I decided that enough was enough. Sometimes, I wonder why they even adopted me. Did they really want another child, or was I just an extra responsibility to them? There are times when I question if they regret adopting me or if they see me as a burden. It often feels like I was brought into the family just to be ignored. My sister never wanted me around, and my parents always seemed more interested in keeping her happy than in making me feel loved. My life wasn't always this way. When I was just 4 years old, my entire world turned upside down. My biological parents and I were in a terrible car accident. Sadly, my parents didn't survive. I was the only one who made it out alive, but I didn't walk away unhurt. I ended up in the hospital where I stayed for almost a year. The nurses later told me that I had been in a coma for 4 months. For the other 9 months, I struggled with severe seizures because of the trauma from the accident. Those days in the hospital were some of the hardest times of my life. I felt scared, lonely, and lost. Sometimes, I even blamed myself for what happened to my parents. The doctors did their best to help me, even bringing in a psychologist to support me mentally and emotionally. Eventually, I recovered enough to leave the hospital, but I had nowhere to go. I didn't have any other family to turn to. After I was discharged, I was taken to an orphanage far from the city. The doctors thought it would be better for me to be somewhere peaceful, away from the sounds and sights of cars. They believed the quiet environment would help me heal faster, both in body and mind. 3 years later, my life changed again. I was adopted by a new family who already had a daughter named Mary. My adoptive parents knew all about my past, about the accident, the nightmares that woke me up screaming, and the breakdowns that would come from time to time. Even though they were warned, they still wanted to take me in and promised to give me a loving home. When we finally went home together, I hoped for a fresh start, a place where I could feel safe and loved. But as time went on, it became clear that this new family wasn't exactly what I had imagined. Instead of feeling welcome, I felt like an outsider, a stranger in my own home. And every day, I wondered if things would ever really change. When I was adopted, I wasn't ready for a new family. I was still grieving the loss of my parents, and adjusting to a new life was hard. But my adoptive parents showed me kindness and affection, helping me feel a bit less alone in the world. During the first 3 years with my new family, I felt safe and loved. I began to feel like I finally had a place to call home, which brought me some comfort. At first, everything seemed okay. But over time, my adoptive sister, Mary, started acting differently toward me. She began to distance herself, often complaining about little things I did around the house. I thought she was just being a typical older sister, teasing me or getting annoyed over small stuff like siblings do. But deep down, things were different. Mary didn't act like she cared about me. Instead, she seemed resentful. Mary felt like I was taking away everything she cared about. She was jealous because I got a lot of attention from our parents. What she didn't understand was that I needed that attention. I wasn't okay, mentally or emotionally. After the accident and losing my parents, I needed extra care and support to heal. But Mary couldn't understand that. She hadn't been through the same kind of pain I had, and besides, she was still young herself. By the time I started middle school, things got worse. My parents didn't pay as much attention to me as they had before. I thought maybe it was because I was growing up, and they wanted me to learn how to be more independent. I figured they were trying to help me become stronger, so I wouldn't need to rely on them as much. But at the same time, Mary had started telling them how she felt neglected, and she struggled with school, blaming it on the attention they gave to me instead of her. While I wasn't allowed to join the soccer team because my parents worried I'd get hurt, I was allowed to play racket sports, which they thought was safer. But even with this small freedom, Mary's resentment only grew. When I entered high school, things got even more complicated. I developed a crush on one of Mary's best friends, and eventually, we started dating. I had no idea that this would create an even bigger gap between Mary and me. Mary felt like I was taking away everyone who mattered to her. It wasn't just about her friend. She felt like I was taking her parents and now even her closest friend. After my girlfriend and I started dating, Mary stopped making new friends and became even more distant from me. After a few months, though, I decided to end things with my girlfriend. My PTSD was starting to flare up again, and I was becoming more tense and irritable. I was afraid that if I continued down this path, I might hurt someone, even if I didn't mean to. The emotional struggles were catching up with me, and I didn't want anyone else to be caught in the mess that was my life. I began going to AB meetings, and my parents arranged for me to see a therapist. But each time I had a therapy appointment, my parents couldn't come with me. My sister, Mary, always found some excuse that kept them from going, making me feel like my needs were always pushed aside. Still, I kept attending, and little by little, I started feeling better. 4 months before I was set to graduate high school, I was really making progress. Graduation was something I had looked forward to for a long time, hoping it would be a day my parents would finally celebrate with me. On the big day, I dressed up in a fancy suit my parents had bought for the occasion. I was excited, sitting in the living room and waiting for them to take me to the school. As I waited, I suddenly heard a loud noise from the stairs. I turned around to see Mary at the bottom of the staircase, lying on the floor with a cut on her forehead that was bleeding. My heart raced as I yelled for Mom and Dad to come downstairs quickly. They rushed down, calling Mary's name, full of worry. "Mary, what happened?" Mom asked, her voice filled with panic. "Jacob pushed me," Mary whispered, just loud enough for them to hear. I couldn't believe it. She was accusing me of pushing her down the stairs. Why would I do something like that, especially on my graduation day? My parents didn't question her. They were so focused on Mary that they immediately decided to take her to the hospital. Before they left, they handed me some money for a cab and told me to get to school on my own. I couldn't understand why they would believe Mary without even asking me what happened. As I sat in the cab alone, 1,000 thoughts filled my mind. I felt angry, hurt, and lost. I even thought about running away from home, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything. I realized I just had to get through the day on my own, no matter how much it hurt. When I arrived at my graduation, I looked around at all the families there, clapping and cheering. I wished my parents could have been there too, like other families were, proud and excited. I missed my biological parents deeply that day. They would have been there with me, celebrating this big moment. After the ceremony, a friend invited me to a graduation party, but I decided not to go. I thought my parents might want to talk about what happened with Mary earlier, so I headed home. When I walked in, my mom and dad were sitting in the living room, waiting for me. I sat down on the couch across from them, ready for whatever they were about to say. "Son," Dad began, "we know you've been through a lot, and we understand if you're still struggling. But what you did to your sister today was wrong. It wasn't the right thing to do, especially today. She could have been seriously hurt." I couldn't believe it. They truly thought I had pushed Mary. It felt like no matter how hard I tried, they would never see me for who I really was. I was getting blamed for something I didn't even do. It felt so unfair. Life had already been hard, taking my real parents away from me, and now I was being accused of something I hadn't done. After that day, things changed between me and Mary. I decided to keep my distance from her as much as I could. It was clear she was trying to turn my parents against me, making them regret ever adopting me. As summer approached, I applied to college, hoping to build a future for myself. When I told my parents, they seemed proud at first. But a few days later, they told me they couldn't afford to pay my tuition fees. I felt like my parents were changing. They were once caring, but now they seemed distant and harsh, almost like strangers. I knew Mary had a lot to do with it. I didn't let that stop me. I wrote sponsorship letters to different places, hoping someone would help me with college fees. Luckily, a local bank offered me financial support. That's how I was able to start college. During my time there, I met my future wife and her brother, Scott. Scott and I became close friends, especially after I started dating his sister. He was incredibly skilled with computers and was always there to lend a hand if I needed it. During college, I barely heard from my parents. It seemed they were happier without me around. Maybe they were glad that I was out of their lives, even if just for a little while. I focused on my studies and tried to let go of the hurt. As graduation from college came closer, I thought it would be nice to have my family there to celebrate with me. I invited them, hoping this time might be different. But on the morning of my graduation, my mom called me. She told me they wouldn't be coming because Mary had been robbed. She said Mary was too scared to travel or be left alone, so they needed to stay with her. My mom even said that Mary needed them more than I did. Those words hit me hard. It felt like every important moment in my life had been overshadowed by Mary. Whenever I needed my parents, it was always Mary this or Mary that. I understood that Mary was their biological daughter, but I was their child too. They had signed those adoption papers and promised to be my parents. But it felt like they only saw Mary and I was just there. I didn't even expect both of them to come. One of them could have stayed with Mary while the other came to support me. But they didn't. Once again, Mary needed them more than I did, and that was that. That day, I realized I would never be as important to them as Mary was. I was just the adopted one in their eyes. My happiness, my achievements, they didn't matter as much. It felt like I was a meaningless orphan, while Mary was their precious baby. That was the moment I understood that no matter what I did, I would always come second in their hearts. I decided to let go of the past and move forward with my life. 10 years after graduation, I asked my girlfriend to marry me, and she said yes. I was overjoyed and couldn't wait to share the news with my family. I went home for dinner to announce my engagement, hoping everyone would be happy for me. When I told them, my parents looked thrilled, but Mary didn't seem happy at all. She just sat there, looking like she wanted to disappear. I couldn't understand why she seemed jealous, even though she already had mom and dad all to herself. I wondered if she simply couldn't stand to see me happy. After glaring at me for a moment, she got up, gave me a sour look, and walked to her room. Mom, Dad, and I looked at each other, wondering if anyone had said something wrong, but we couldn't think of anything. Soon, we started preparing for the wedding. Mary refused to help, saying she was too busy with work and couldn't leave the company just for a wedding. She told Mom and Dad to go ahead with the plans and assured them she'd take care of everything at work while they were gone. I really wanted my parents to be there for this special day, but I was scared Mary would try to pull her usual tricks, keeping them away from me. So, I went to talk to her. I asked her to let Mom and Dad be a part of my wedding because it was one of the most important days of my life. She just smirked at me, giving me a cold, almost mocking smile. I also spoke to my parents, asking them to make sure they could come. They told me not to worry and insisted that Mary wouldn't do anything to hurt me. I wasn't so sure, but I tried to trust them. Finally, the wedding day arrived. I was excited and a bit nervous, looking around the house for my dad to help me get ready. But he was nowhere to be found. My heart sank, and I instantly suspected Mary was up to something. Then, I received a voicemail from Dad. He said he and Mom couldn't come to the wedding because Mary had been in a car accident. I felt a rush of worry, thinking she might be seriously hurt. But deep down, I had a feeling this was just another of her plans to keep my parents away from me on my special day. As I stood there on my wedding day without my parents, I felt a deep sadness. I missed my real parents so much, especially at that moment. I wished they were there to see what was happening, to see how I was being treated by the people who were supposed to be my family. I got married without my family there. My wife and her brother, Scott, kept asking where my parents were, but I felt embarrassed to tell my in-laws that my own family didn't show up to my wedding. Deep down, I was hurt and disappointed that my parents chose Mary over me again. But I didn't want to let it ruin my day. This was my wedding, and I deserved to feel happy. After the wedding, my wife and I went on our honeymoon. For the first time since I lost my biological parents, I felt truly happy. Being with my wife made me feel whole, like she was the missing part of my life. She didn't mind my struggles, like the nightmares that still haunted me. When I'd wake up in the middle of the night, she'd hold me tight and whisper, "It's okay, it's just a dream. I'm here with you." I had never felt safer. I used to think I needed a therapist, but what I really needed was her by my side. During our honeymoon, Scott called me with an offer. He asked if I wanted him to edit my wedding photos and videos, free of charge. How could I say no to that? I gave him the green light to go ahead, and he started working on them. We spent about 4 wonderful weeks on our honeymoon, and I didn't even think about my family back home. I was completely focused on enjoying this special time with my wife. After our honeymoon, we returned home and got back to work. We rented a small apartment to save up for a house. Soon after, my brother-in-law, Scott, came over to show us the photos he'd edited. I thought he'd just clean them up a bit, but I was surprised to see that he'd added my parents into the wedding photos, making it look like they were there. At first, I was unsure how to feel about it. Using Photoshop to add my parents into the pictures felt strange, but then Scott shared an idea. He said if I posted those photos online, it would drive Mary crazy to see that my parents were there at my wedding while she wasn't. I couldn't help but smile at the thought. It was a small payback for all the ways she tried to ruin my happiness. So, I decided to go along with the plan and posted the photos on social media. Almost immediately, the pictures started getting tons of likes and comments. But the reactions I was really waiting for were from Mary, my mom, or my dad. I wanted them to see the photos and feel even a hint of regret for missing such an important day in my life. Seeing all the positive comments lifted my spirits. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was in the shadow of my family's neglect. These were my memories, and I had made them beautiful, even if my family wasn't really there. The day after I posted my wedding pictures, I received a lot of calls and messages from home. My family must have finally seen the photos. When I picked up the phone, I could tell right away that my parents were furious. They sounded like they were about to explode with anger. My parents told me never to come back to their house, saying that what I had done was unethical and shameless. All I did was post pictures of my wedding, with the edited images of them included. Was it really so wrong? Mom kept telling me that Mary hadn't stopped crying over it, saying she felt left out and neglected. She demanded that I take down the photos and videos immediately. But I refused. Dad then told me, "Tell me what you want, and I'll give it to you. Just take down that nonsense you posted. Don't make me regret ever giving you a home." His words stung, filled with anger and disappointment. I couldn't hold back my feelings any longer. I laughed and replied, "Listen, Dad, don't think you did me a favor by giving me a home. You gave me a roof over my head, sure, but I had that at the orphanage too. Thanks for the education, but apart from that, you and Mom only made me miss my real parents more every day. You've always been bad parents who only cared about Mary, never about me." The line went silent for a moment. I took a deep breath and continued, "By the way, maybe you should read Mary's diary. You might learn the real reason she suffered on all my special days. You'll see it was all part of her plan. You always took her side without even thinking about how it made me feel. I felt worthless, like I meant nothing to you." I then added, "If you want to make it up to me, maybe you can arrange a second wedding that you'll actually attend. We can take pictures together like a real family, and then I'll take down the other photos and videos." My parents were shocked. They could hardly believe I was asking them to arrange another wedding, just so they could be there this time. But I wanted them to realize how much it hurt that they missed my wedding in the first place. Eventually, my parents asked to see Mary's diary, and when they read it, they were stunned. They discovered that all of Mary's misfortunes on my special days had been carefully planned by her. She had gone out of her way to make sure my moments were ruined, just so she could keep our parents' attention all to herself. This truth shook my parents. For the first time, they understood that Mary had manipulated them, turning them against me over and over again. It was painful for them to realize, but finally, they saw the real reason I had felt so alone all these years. Mary always seemed so innocent, but clearly, she wasn't as innocent as everyone thought. She was jealous of me, believing I had taken everything she thought should be hers. She let that jealousy grow inside her, until it completely took over. Her actions became so controlled by envy that she didn't care about anyone's feelings but her own. If it weren't for my brother-in-law, I'd probably still be feeling sorry for myself, thinking about all the ways my family had hurt me over the years. But now, looking back, I realize Mary's actions were more than just selfish. They were truly damaging. All she wanted was to keep our parents' attention, even if it meant ruining my life along the way. Mary's jealousy led her to take extreme actions, including keeping my parents from my wedding. That moment, when they missed my wedding, was the final straw for me. It was clear that my family would never be what I needed them to be. Missing such an important day showed me just how much they'd allowed Mary's manipulations to control their actions. Thanks to the support of my brother-in-law, I was able to see things more clearly. I no longer blame myself for how my family treated me, and I can see that Mary's jealousy was at the root of it all. She played the part of the perfect daughter, but her need to take over every moment, every bit of attention, was more than I could handle. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What do you think about this story? Have you ever dealt with a sibling who constantly took over or craved attention to the point of hurting others? I'd love to hear about your experiences. Let's talk about it in the comments below. And thank you so much for being here today. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories filled with drama and real-life twists. I'll be back with more soon, and I can't wait to share more stories with you.
I never thought a simple phone call could completely change my life, but that's exactly what happened. It was a cool autumn afternoon in Newark, and the leaves were falling gently to the ground. I was enjoying the quiet when I noticed my phone screen light up with an unknown number. At first, I thought about ignoring it. I mean, who answers random calls these days? But something deep inside me told me to pick up. When I did, the voice on the other end froze me in my tracks. It had been years, but I knew immediately who it was. "Anna, it's Christina," she said. Her tone was strange, a mix of politeness and something else I couldn't quite figure out. "Christina," I replied, doing my best to keep my voice calm, though my heart was racing. "What's going on?" It had been years since I'd heard from Christina, my estranged sister. She wasn't calling for a friendly chat. Her next words were a bombshell. "Grandma passed away." I couldn't believe it. Our grandmother, the one constant in our family, was gone. But as I listened to Christina, I realized there was more to her call. Her voice carried an air of smugness that made my skin crawl. "I just wanted to let you know," she added, with a tone that sounded almost mocking. "I'm sure you're busy with your modest life." The words hit me like a slap. I could almost picture her smirking as she said it. But I refused to let her see how much it hurt. "Thank you for letting me know," I replied coolly. "I'll make arrangements to come." It wasn't just her words that hurt. It was the flood of memories they brought back. Growing up, Christina was always the golden child. She had our father's favor, his attention, and a natural charm that made life seem so easy for her. I, on the other hand, was the one in her shadow, always trying to prove myself, but never quite measuring up. Our relationship had been strained for years. The final blow came when she betrayed me in the worst possible way. Brian, my ex-fiancé, the man I thought I'd spend my life with, had left me for Christina. She used her charm, her manipulative ways, and stole him right out of my life. It wasn't just a broken engagement. It was a betrayal that left deep scars. After that, I cut ties, not just with her but with the rest of my family. Our father, who had always favored Christina, made it clear where his loyalty lay. My mother, though caring, couldn't bridge the gap between us. So I built my own life far away from the chaos. I married Arthur, a kind and supportive man who works in tech. Together, we built a cozy, love-filled home in the suburbs. Our daughter, Abigail, is the light of our lives. At 5 years old, she's already an artist in the making, sharing her drawings on her popular YouTube channel. While my life may not be flashy, it's rich in love and happiness. But hearing Christina's voice again reminded me of the pain I had worked so hard to leave behind. This phone call wasn't just news about our grandmother. It was the beginning of a storm I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The call from Christina stirred up a storm of emotions I thought I had left behind. The idea of returning to the family home for our grandmother's funeral made my stomach twist. It had been years since I'd been back, and the memories were a bittersweet mix. Grandma had always been the heart of our family, the one person who believed in me no matter what. Her passing felt like the end of something irreplaceable, and now, with Christina's call, it seemed like I was being pulled back into a world I'd worked hard to escape. Over the next few days, I tried to prepare myself for the trip. Packing my bags wasn't the hardest part. It was the emotional baggage I knew I'd be carrying. Seeing Christina again was something I wasn't looking forward to. Her call hadn't just been to inform me of Grandma's death. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. With Christina, there always was. The day of the funeral arrived, and soon I found myself standing in front of the old family home. It looked exactly as I remembered it, and yet something felt different. The house seemed to hold whispers of the past, of our childhood laughter, arguments, dreams, and disappointments. Stepping inside, I was hit by a wave of emotions. The air was thick with grief, nostalgia, and unspoken tension. The rooms were filled with familiar faces. Some wore expressions of sorrow. Others had a guarded look, as if they had come not just to mourn but to observe, judge, or scheme. As I moved through the crowd, I saw her, Christina. She stood near a group of people, effortlessly commanding their attention.
She hadn't changed.
Her charm was still magnetic, and her presence reminded me of the old family dynamics I had tried so hard to escape. I kept my distance at first, unsure of how to approach her, or if I even wanted to. But Christina had other plans. During the ceremony, while people were delivering heartfelt eulogies, she managed to catch me alone. "Anna," she said, smiling in that way she always did, polite but insincere. It's been a while. I forced a smile. Yes, it has. How have you been? Oh, she said, her voice coated in false sweetness. Life has been interesting. I could feel the familiar undercurrent in her words, the subtle digs and unspoken rivalry that had never truly disappeared. For a moment, we just stood there, exchanging pleasantries that felt anything but pleasant. It was clear to me then that this wasn't just about saying goodbye to our grandmother. It was about something deeper, about facing the unresolved past. Looking at her, I realized that this reunion wasn't just about mourning. It was about confronting everything I had avoided, the betrayals, the unspoken grievances, and the choices that had shaped who we both had become. Little did I know this was only the beginning. I knew this encounter would bring revelations that could shake everything I thought I knew about my sister and our family. The days leading up to the funeral were tense, filled with emotions I had tried to bury. I kept busy with Arthur, Abigail, and our everyday life, but no matter how much I tried, I couldn't escape the thought of seeing Christina again. It wasn't just her. It was the whole family I had distanced myself from. Memories of the past were creeping in, and they weren't all happy ones. When the day of the funeral finally came, the atmosphere was thick with sadness and unresolved feelings. The family home, with its faded charm, was crowded with relatives and old friends. The house seemed alive, like it was silently watching over us, holding on to the echoes of our childhood, the laughter, the fights, and the secrets we'd hidden within its walls. As I entered the living room, I felt her presence before I saw her. Christina was there, as poised and confident as ever. Her polished appearance only reminded me of the rivalry that had always existed between us. It wasn't long before she made her way over to me, her smile softer this time, but still edged with something I couldn't quite trust. "I've been meaning to catch up," she said, her voice friendly but with a hint of curiosity. "It's been a while since we talked." I forced a polite smile, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Yes, it has. How have you been?" "Oh, Christina said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Busy but good. I'm sure you've heard from the family how things have been for me." I nodded, though I wasn't entirely sure what she was referring to. The last I had heard, Christina was living a glamorous life in Jacksonville, full of success and luxury. At least, that's how the stories went. But I knew better than to believe everything I heard. With Christina, there was always more beneath the surface. During the wake, she made sure everyone knew about her so-called perfect life. She talked endlessly about Jacksonville, her upscale lifestyle, and her achievements. It was clear she was trying to impress, to prove her life was better than mine. I watched her with a mix of irritation and curiosity. Behind her confident facade, I could sense the same lies and manipulations that had defined her for years. She even brought up Brian Adams, my former fiancé, and now her ex-husband. Her casual mentions of him, her attempts to appear unaffected by their failed marriage, felt like she was reopening an old wound. Brian had once been my everything. We had plans, dreams, and a future until Christina, with her charm and cunning, took him away. The betrayal broke me, leaving scars that I thought had healed. Seeing her now, so nonchalant and proud, was a painful reminder of all I had lost. It wasn't just about Brian. It was about all the hurt she had caused. This encounter wasn't just about the funeral. It was forcing me to confront a past I had tried so hard to leave behind. I decided it was time to confront Christina about the past. I had carried the weight of her betrayal for far too long, and I hoped that talking to her might bring me some closure. As the crowd at the funeral began to thin out, I spotted her standing near the living room window. Summoning my courage, I approached her. "Christina, can we talk?" I asked, doing my best to keep my voice calm. She turned to me, her expression unreadable at first, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. "I need to understand," I began. "Why did you have to take Brian from me? What made you think it was okay to destroy what we had?" For a moment, Christina's cheerful mask dropped, replaced by a colder, more calculating look. "Anna, it's not about taking anything," she replied, her tone sharp. Brian and I had our own connection. You just didn't see it. Her words stung, but I wasn't going to back down. You manipulated him, I said, my voice rising with emotion. You knew how much I loved him. You knew what he meant to me. She shrugged, her indifference infuriating. Brian made his own choices. You can't blame me for that. Life doesn't wait for anyone, Anna. You need to move on. Her dismissive attitude only made my anger grow. You never understood, did you? I said, my voice trembling. It wasn't just about Brian. It was about everything. You always seemed to have everything handed to you while I was left struggling to prove myself. Her expression hardened, and her voice turned icy. Don't blame me for your shortcomings, she shot back. We all have our battles. Maybe if you had been more assertive, things would have turned out differently. Her words felt like knives, cutting into wounds I thought had healed. I wanted to lash out, to yell, but I forced myself to take a deep breath. This isn't just about Brian, I said quietly. It's about our family. It's about the way everything always seemed to work in your favor while I was left behind. Before she could respond, a group of distant relatives approached, pulling us apart. The confrontation ended abruptly, leaving everything unresolved. I stepped away, my emotions swirling, and spent the rest of the evening in a daze. Faces blurred together as people offered their condolences, but my thoughts were stuck on Christina and the painful memories she had stirred up. The next day, as the funeral came to a close, I felt a mix of relief and unease. The family dynamics were as complicated as ever, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more beneath the surface. Christina's perfect life was starting to show cracks, and I was determined to uncover the truth. I left the funeral with a heavy heart, but a newfound resolve. The confrontation had opened old wounds, but it had also set the stage for deeper revelations. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it. The days that followed were quiet, yet unsettling, as I prepared myself for what was to come. I kept replaying my confrontation with Christina in my mind, trying to make sense of it all. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that our family's issues were still deeply rooted and unresolved. My mother's apology, though kind, didn't fix the years of distance and pain. It felt more like a bandage on a wound that needed more than just words to heal. During this chaotic time, Arthur and Abigail became my safe haven. Arthur, with his calm and steady presence, never pressured me to talk about what was troubling me. Instead, he simply stayed by my side, offering quiet support. Abigail, with her youthful energy and curiosity, was my light in the darkness. She poured her heart into her YouTube channel, sharing her artwork with the world. Her joy and excitement were contagious and gave me something positive to focus on. But the calm didn't last long. Christina, ever dramatic, took to social media in an attempt to belittle me. Her posts were filled with sarcasm, painting herself as wildly successful while making veiled jabs about my ordinary life. It was frustrating to see her try to make herself look better at my expense, and it hurt to know she was doing this so publicly. That's when Abigail's YouTube channel became an unexpected tool in this battle. One evening, after seeing a particularly cruel post from Christina, I had an idea. Abigail and I decided to make a video, not to directly confront Christina, but to show the happiness and love in our lives. We created a heartfelt video featuring Abigail's art and moments from our family life. While it seemed innocent on the surface, we included subtle references to Christina's lies. It was our way of standing up for ourselves without stooping to her level. The video took off quickly. Viewers flooded the comments, praising Abigail's talent and the warmth of our family. It didn't take long for people to connect the dots, and the tide began to turn. Christina's carefully crafted image started to crack. People began pointing out the inconsistencies in her stories, and her social media posts were filled with criticism. The truth about her manipulations was finally coming to light. As the video went viral, Christina's reputation began to fall apart. The backlash on social media was harsh, and people started questioning the persona she had spent years building. Meanwhile, Brian, her ex-husband, was also struggling. The public attention surrounding their failed marriage and his involvement in this drama affected his professional life. He made a critical mistake at work, which led to him losing his job as a software engineer. The pressure of his personal and professional failures pushed him into a downward spiral. For Christina, the strain became too much to handle. Her perfect facade was crumbling, and with it, her sense of control. The fallout from this battle was far from over, and it was clear that the choices we made now would shape the future for everyone involved. Christina filed for divorce, cutting her final ties with Brian. Their son, Gabriel, became an innocent victim of their turmoil. With Christina's unstable situation, Gabriel was placed in a care facility, a far cry from the privileged life Christina had once proudly shown off. The cracks in the family's dynamics grew wider, forcing everyone to face the consequences of past actions. Amidst the upheaval, my mother approached me. She had always been more sympathetic toward Christina, but now she stood before me with tears in her eyes and an apology on her lips. "I'm sorry, Anna," she said, her voice trembling. "For everything. We should have treated you better. I see now how much pain we caused." Her words, though genuine, didn't erase the years of hurt. Still, I appreciated her honesty. It was a step forward, but healing would take time. I decided to keep our relationship polite but distant, focusing instead on what truly mattered, my own family's happiness and peace. With all the drama swirling around us, Arthur and I decided we needed a break. We planned a trip to an amusement park for Abigail, a day to escape the chaos and reconnect as a family. It turned out to be exactly what we needed. Abigail's laughter filled the air as she raced from ride to ride, her joy infectious. Arthur and I held hands, enjoying the simple moments that reminded us why our little family was so strong. The outing gave us a chance to step away from the shadows of the past and focus on the light of the present. Watching Abigail's excitement and feeling the warmth of Arthur's presence, I realized how far we'd come. This was our life, a life built on love, trust, and support. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and that was enough. As the weeks passed after our trip, a sense of calm began to settle over us. The chaos that had once shaken my world was fading, and I could feel a new balance taking hold. Christina's downfall was harsh, but inevitable. Her constant need to prove herself, her envy, and her manipulative actions had finally caught up with her. The divorce, the loss of her son's care, and her crumbling reputation were painful consequences of the choices she had made. Brian, too, was facing his own struggles. His dismissal from his job left him adrift, struggling to rebuild his life. But for me, these events felt distant, like echoes from a life I no longer lived. My focus had shifted entirely to my family and the contentment we had found together. Through everything, I learned a powerful lesson. The past may shape us, but it doesn't define us. With Christina's influence fading and my family thriving, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Our journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, I could look forward to the future with peace in my heart. Arthur and I worked hard to strengthen our relationship, leaning on each other for support. Despite the challenges we had faced, our bond only grew stronger. Our daughter, Abigail, was thriving in her creative pursuits. Her YouTube channel continued to be a source of joy and positivity, not just for her but for all of us. Watching her grow, smile, and share her talent with the world reminded me every day of what truly mattered: family, love, and happiness. One day, I received a letter from my mother. In it, she poured out her feelings of regret, apologizing for how things had turned out and asking for forgiveness. Her words felt sincere, and I appreciated her reaching out. But I also knew that healing the rift between us wouldn't happen overnight. I responded with kindness, acknowledging her apology, while gently letting her know that rebuilding our relationship would take time and effort from both sides. The experiences we had gone through had changed our family forever. My parents' favoritism toward Christina and the fallout from those decisions had taught me valuable lessons about strength, forgiveness, and resilience. I realized that healing wasn't just about time, it was about understanding and choosing to let go of the anger that weighed me down. In those quiet moments of reflection, I found clarity. The pain of the past had brought Arthur, Abigail, and me closer together. Our little family had grown stronger, and our appreciation for each other had deepened. Whether it was sharing a laugh during dinner or enjoying a quiet evening together, the small, simple moments became our foundation for happiness. As summer gave way to the crisp days of fall, I felt inspired to create something meaningful. I began planning a community project that would help families work through conflicts and build healthier relationships. Drawing from my own experiences, I wanted to offer support and guidance to others who might be facing similar struggles. This initiative became my way of turning the pain of the past into something positive. Looking back, I could see how far we had come. The tense moments at Grandma's funeral, the shocking revelations, and even the battles on social media had all been part of a journey that shaped who I was. Christina's story served as a cautionary tale, but it also highlighted my own strength and determination to move forward with love and purpose. As I closed that chapter of my life, I felt a deep sense of peace. The road had been hard, but it had also been eye-opening. The future, once clouded by uncertainty, now felt full of hope and promise. With Arthur by my side, Abigail's laughter lighting up our days, and my community project taking shape, I knew we were building something beautiful. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I was confident in one thing: the strength and unity of our family would see us through anything. The love we shared was our greatest gift, and it would guide us as we embraced the future together. My name is Victoria, and I work as an office worker now. It hasn't been easy to get to this point because I've faced many struggles. Most of these struggles came from problems at home and the complicated relationships in our family. My relationship with my mom has been rocky since I was a child. We argued a lot, mainly because of her strict personality. On top of that, I look a lot like my dad, Daniel, which made things even harder between us. My dad wasn't violent or unfaithful. In fact, he was a very honest and kind man. I often wondered why he married my mom in the first place. My mom didn't like him because he didn't earn much money. While my dad worked a steady office job, he always dreamed of becoming a cartoon artist, a dream my mom couldn't stand. Even though we were poor, I didn't have too many problems as a child because my dad was always there for me. His kindness never wavered, and he always encouraged me. He supported me in my difficult relationship with my mom and often said, "No matter what your mom says, I'll make our dreams come true." We didn't have much, but I loved my dad deeply. Despite the tension with my mom, we managed to get along somewhat while I was growing up. But everything fell apart when I started university. My mom and dad's relationship got worse, and eventually, she divorced him. The divorce happened partly because my mom met a bartender at a nightclub she used to visit to escape her frustrations with my dad. This bartender, who was 15 years younger than her, is now my stepfather. I call him my stepfather just for convenience, but he's nothing like a real father. He always addressed me casually with, "Hey, you," and went out of his way to show off his close bond with my mom in front of me. It was unbelievable. After I finished university, I couldn't find a job right away, so I continued living with my mom and stepfather. Then something unexpected happened. My mom got pregnant. Of course, the baby's father was my troublesome stepfather. That's where things became even more complicated. I got a sister 25 years younger than me. Her name was Sydney, and she was so cute that she didn't seem to resemble my stepfather or my plain-looking mother. It might not be nice to say this, but she didn't look like she came from them at all. My stepfather wasn't particularly handsome, and my mother was just average-looking. As for me, I'm neither pretty nor unattractive, but since I look like my father, who my mother despises, she quickly started comparing me to Sydney. "Sydney will grow up to be beautiful, unlike her sister," my mom declared. Sydney was born when my mom was 47, so she was overly obsessed with her. At the same time, her dislike for me only grew worse. "Victoria, you're the older sister, so go change Sydney's diapers," she'd say. My mom, who was unemployed and spent her days watching Korean dramas, started bossing me around nonstop. My life became miserable. Sydney turned out to be very smart and got into an expensive private kindergarten. By then, I had a job, but I didn't earn much. Without a partner to support me like my mom had, I had no choice but to keep living at home. I barely spoke to my family and lived like a stranger in my own house. Then a big event happened 9 years ago when I was 31. It was a day I'll never forget. We went on a family outing to an amusement park, but it only felt like a family in name. My wealthy stepfather drove us there in his Porsche, and during the ride, they were busy praising Sydney. "Sydney, you did so well on the entrance exam for that prestigious elementary school. Congratulations on getting in," my stepfather said. "I can't believe she's my daughter. One day, she'll become a great leader and take care of us." Sydney replied confidently, "Yes, I'll do my best to make you both proud, Mom and Dad." Sydney was incredibly smart, and it was clear she met all their expectations. Her cleverness was surprising, especially considering who her parents were. "I can't wait to see what you achieve, Sydney. Unlike your sister," my stepfather added. "I won't be like Victoria," Sydney said with a smirk. The car was filled with laughter from my mom and stepfather. I just sat there, frozen. Sydney's sharp words reminded me so much of my mother. At the amusement park, the day didn't get any better. We went to ride the roller coaster, but my mom, stepfather, and Sydney went first and left me to ride alone. As I nervously waited, they teased me. "It's not like you're going to fall," my stepfather said. "But life has already brought you down, hasn't it? How pathetic to have a sister like you," Sydney added. Later, at the haunted house, they did the same thing. They all went ahead, leaving me behind to walk through it alone. When I finally came out, trembling, they were waiting for me at the exit, laughing like it was the funniest thing in the world. While I was scared in the haunted house, Sydney mocked me again. "There's no such thing as ghosts, but honestly, you look like one," she sneered. "It's so embarrassing to have a sister like you." Their constant teasing was enough to make me want to cut ties with them, but the final straw came during the car ride home. "I need to use the restroom," I said nervously. "It's only 40 more minutes to get home." "Just hold it," my stepfather replied. "Why don't you just stop and let her go in the bushes?" my mom suggested, laughing. "Ew, I'm so embarrassed to have a sister who does things like that," Sydney chimed in. At that point, my frustration boiled over. Suddenly, my stepfather slammed on the brakes. "What's wrong?" my mom asked. "Sorry, I thought I saw an animal and didn't want to hit it," he said, glancing at the stuffed toy he had mistaken for something alive. But the sudden stop caused me to lose control for a moment, and a bit leaked out. The smell filled the car. "What are you doing at your age?" my stepfather snapped. "You've dirted my Porsche." "Gross."
Sydney joined in.
Victoria peed herself. How embarrassing. I felt humiliated but stayed silent, ready to admit my mistake. Then my stepfather said something that broke me completely. "Sydney is my only daughter. I've never really seen you as a stepdaughter, let alone a sister to Sydney. Honestly, you're more like her aunt or something," he said coldly. "This smell is unbearable. Everything about you is unbearable," my mom added. "I don't want to see that face of yours anymore. You remind me too much of your father." Sydney laughed. "Good. From now on, I'm an only child. That makes me happy." I couldn't take it anymore. "Is this what you all really think? Fine. I'll leave," I yelled. And that was it. My patience was gone. I packed up my things and left the luxurious apartment where I had been living. I moved into a small, shabby apartment. It wasn't much, but at least I was free from that toxic family. The new apartment was old and falling apart. Looking back, I should have saved more money before leaving so I could have moved somewhere better. My days there were lonely and gloomy, but I had no choice. One day, out of the blue, I received a letter from someone I hadn't heard from in years, my dad. In the letter, he apologized for losing contact and said that although life was tough, he was doing okay. "Dad," I whispered as I read his words. "It wasn't just me struggling, was it? You were the only decent one in the whole family. I want to see you," I thought to myself. Was he the one who always took care of me? Yes, that was him, my dad. By the way, I haven't mentioned this before, but I have a fiancé named Jake. We met at a networking event and now live together in a small apartment. Jake works a steady job while chasing his own dreams, and he's never judged me for my difficult past. Instead, he's been my biggest support. Even though our apartment is simple, Jake moved in happily and never complained about it. "Why don't you go see your real father?" Jake suggested one evening. There's an address on the envelope. I want to, but he hasn't said he wants to see me. I think I should wait until he reaches out first. Really? That feels like a missed opportunity, Jake replied. I feel the same, I admitted. But he might have a new family now. I've decided to wait until he's ready to meet. How about this? Jake said. You don't have to meet him directly. Maybe just seeing him from a distance will be enough. That's a good idea, I said, feeling a little more hopeful. I haven't seen him in 16 years. He's probably aged a lot, but I'll recognize him if he's my dad. Then again, he might be surprised by how much I've changed. You've grown a lot since then. Maybe this is the perfect time, Jake encouraged. That weekend, I decided to check on my dad. I didn't plan to knock on his door or anything. Instead, I would watch from a nearby diner. Thanks to Google Maps, I found a diner right across from his apartment. Technology really is helpful these days. When I arrived, I saw his building. It looked a lot like the apartment I live in. Old and simple. My dad always dreamed of becoming a cartoon artist, but it seemed he hadn't achieved that goal. Becoming a cartoon artist isn't easy, and I couldn't help but feel sad. Why does someone as kind and hardworking as my dad struggle, while someone like Sydney gets everything handed to her? Hey, is that him? Jake asked, pointing outside. He looks like the photo you showed me. I turned to look. Yes, that's him. It's really been a long time. But as I watched, my heart sank. My dad didn't look like someone who was doing well. His hair was messy, his clothes were wrinkled, and he looked tired and worn out. He sat by the window, sketching endlessly, but there was a heaviness about him, as if he was carrying years of disappointment. Oh, he looks so down, Jake said softly. It's tough to see him like this. I nodded, trying to keep my emotions in check. It's hard to watch. He seemed stuck, drawing and facing failure after failure. Even though he didn't look successful, to me, he was still my dad, the person who had always been there for me. But seeing him like this made my heart ache even more. I have dreams too, so I can understand how my dad must feel. I remember him as someone who, even without much money or a happy family life, always shone brightly. But now, it's clear he's been through a lot. Today's drinks are half price, the waitress said as she approached. Oh, sorry, I mumbled, snapping out of my thoughts. Seeing my dad like that had left me too shaken. I decided to leave the diner without ordering anything. If I had known it would feel this way, I wouldn't have come to check on him. I thought I wanted to see him, but only if he was doing well. Why don't you write him a simple letter? Jake suggested as we walked home. See how he responds. I don't know, I replied. His first letter was so short, and from how he looked, he doesn't seem to have much going on. He probably doesn't have a new family either. He just seems lonely. Poor dad. I felt a deep sadness as we got back to the apartment. I opened the mailbox, but what I found shocked me even more than seeing my dad. There's a letter here, I said, holding it up. Who's it from? Jake asked. It's from Mom.
What?
Jake's eyes widened. From the mom who made your life miserable? Isn't this the first time she's reached out since you moved out? Yes, I said, still staring at the envelope. It's been 9 years since I left. Why would she want to contact me now? What does it say? Jake asked. I opened the letter, and its contents left me speechless. She wants to visit me, I said finally. What? Jake looked just as confused as I felt. Why now? Why would she want to come to your house? I have no idea, I said. It doesn't make sense. Maybe she regrets how she treated me. Jake shrugged. It's possible. Maybe she feels bad about what she did. I don't think so, I said firmly. Remember the car incident and how she threw me out? Someone like her doesn't change easily. Still, there must be a reason, Jake said thoughtfully. What if she's sick or doesn't have much time left? I paused at the thought. If that's true, it's sad, I admitted. Even after everything, if she's sick, maybe I should sympathize with her. But how did she even find my address? Jake frowned. You didn't give it to her, right? Or to your stepfather or Sydney?
Of course not, I said.
but somehow she knows where I live. It's unsettling. Could she have hired someone to find me? Maybe it's simpler than that, Jake said. She might have used a family registry. Parents can get that kind of information. That's true, I said, feeling uneasy. She could definitely do something like that. So, is it true that she wants to come here? Jake asked.
Yes, I said.
She says she wants to visit next week. That's pretty soon, Jake said. It sounds urgent. She's always been unpredictable, but there must be a specific reason this time. Maybe she's sick, I said quietly. Or maybe something serious has happened. Even though she's my mom, it's hard to believe she's suddenly changed. I didn't want to meet my mom, but it was hard to say no, so I reluctantly agreed. All right, I'll meet her, I told Jake. But I'm not excited about it. Will you stay with me? I need to introduce you. Of course, Jake said. I've been waiting for the chance to meet her, whenever you're ready. Finally, the day came, the first time I would see my mom in 9 years. The night before, I was so nervous I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining how it would go. She's definitely going to show up in flashy clothes like she used to, I told Jake. And then she'll say something like, "Oh, so this is the simple little place you're living in?" That doesn't sound like something a mom would say, Jake replied.
You've never met her, I said.
That's exactly her personality. Honestly, I just wanted the visit to be over quickly. Deep down, I didn't want her to come at all. It was such a complicated feeling. And then the doorbell rang. My heart raced as I walked to the door. I hesitated for a moment before looking through the peephole.
What I saw shocked me. Mom?
I whispered. Open the door, Jake said gently. She came all this way, but the woman standing outside wasn't the flamboyant, confident mom I remembered. She was thin, almost frail, and dressed in plain, simple clothes. She looked nothing like her old self. What happened to her? I wondered aloud. Could she be seriously ill? When I opened the door, she looked at me with teary eyes. Victoria, it's been so long. I really wanted to see you. Mom, what's going on? I asked, still stunned. You've lost so much weight and your clothes. Are you sick? I was overwhelmed, but what happened next left me completely speechless. My mom bowed her head and apologized. Victoria, I was wrong, she said. I want to apologize for everything I did to you in the past. Please forgive me.
What?
I said, confused. Why are you apologizing out here? Lift your head and come inside. I let her in, still feeling awkward and unsure. After we sat down, I introduced Jake to her. She exchanged polite small talk with him, but soon she started to open up about why she had come. Actually, I've been having a lot of problems with your stepfather, she admitted. What? I said, surprised. You two always seemed so close. I didn't expect that. It was hard to believe. They had always been united, making my life miserable. Now, she looked broken, and I didn't know what could have caused such a change. What happened between you two? I asked, still trying to process this unexpected turn of events. I couldn't even think straight. Mom, please just explain what happened.
Try to keep it simple, I said.
Take your time, there's no rush. Just speak calmly, Jake added. My mom began explaining. It turns out my stepfather got involved in a scam and was eventually arrested. I knew he was a problematic person, but I never thought he'd do something like that. So, what's happening with him now? I asked. He's out on bail, my mom replied. That must have been so hard for you, I said. She nodded. Back when we met, he used to approach me at nightclubs, selling surefire bets on gambling and stocks. I always wondered how he had so much money, even though he wasn't a particularly charming bartender. Now it makes sense. Hearing this, I realized how much stress my mom had been under. She didn't look like her old self at all. At least it wasn't a serious illness. That was one small relief. I can't believe this, I said. I thought he was strange, but not to this level. I really underestimated how bad it was. She sighed. By trusting someone like him, I caused you so much pain. Well, that's all in the past now, I said, though it felt strange to comfort her after everything. I was already overwhelmed by what she told me, but there was more to come. How's Sydney doing?
I asked.
She's the daughter of a man who was arrested for fraud, right? She went to a prestigious school. Has this affected hers? Yes, my mom said. Because of her father's arrest, she had to drop out. She's now studying at a public school with ordinary kids. Ordinary kids, I repeated. Despite all the trouble Sydney caused me, I couldn't help but feel a little sorry for her. She had worked so hard to get into that school, only to lose it all because of her father's crimes. There's something else I need to tell you about Sydney, my mom said hesitantly. I felt uneasy. What is it? She's not actually the real daughter of the man who was arrested, my mom admitted.
What?
I said, shocked. What does that mean? When I was going to nightclubs regularly, I fell in love with your stepfather, she explained. But I also had relationships with other bartenders. One of them, who worked as a university researcher during the day and bartended at night to make extra money, turned out to be Sydney's biological father. I was stunned. That's unbelievable, I said. I always thought there was something different about Sydney. She didn't seem like either of you. She's intelligent and sharp, but I never imagined this. Yes, my mom said. Her biological father is very smart and good-looking, which explains why Sydney is so cute. Does he know about this? I asked. Yes, he knows, my mom admitted. I couldn't believe the tangled mess of lies and secrets my family was built on. Every new detail was more shocking than the last. When I confronted my mom about the fraud, she brushed it off, saying, "You must be hiding something too." Wow, that's a huge problem, Jake said. It turned out my stepfather had started noticing that Sydney didn't look like him. Suspicious, he hired a detective and discovered the truth right before his arrest. My mom laughed as she told me this. Laughable? I asked, shocked. Is this really something to laugh about? A stepfather arrested for fraud, a mother who had affairs and lied about her daughter's father. It's unbelievable. This is the reality of our family. At that moment, I realized I still didn't understand why she had come to see me. So, why are you really here today? I asked. Oh, right, I almost forgot, my mom said casually. I mentioned earlier that he's out on bail, didn't I? Yes, I remember, I said, still suspicious. Well, the bail was much higher than expected, and we're struggling financially. So, I came to ask if you could lend me some money. I was completely stunned. I had been worried about her, thinking she might be seriously ill. But this was why she came? I couldn't help but think how foolish I was to feel sympathy for her. This was exactly the kind of person she'd always been. The reason she no longer dressed lavishly or enjoyed fancy meals wasn't because of regret or illness. It was because she was broke from her husband's scams. Despite everything, she had no intention of divorcing him. I felt my anger boiling over. Wait a second, I said sharply. After making my life miserable and kicking me out of the house, now you come asking me for money?
How can you even say that?
But I apologized, didn't I? She replied, as if that solved everything. We're family, Victoria. And families should help each other in tough times. Family? I snapped. When have you ever acted like a mother to me? Calm down, she said, ignoring my frustration. By the way, how much do you earn? Let me see your bank book. That was the last straw. My anger exploded. The same woman who had thrown me out years ago was now shamelessly asking for my financial help. This time, I was the one throwing her out. Despite Jake trying to mediate, I pushed her out the door with her belongings. I was so angry, I barely remember what happened after that. A week later, still reeling from that nightmarish encounter, I checked the mailbox and found another letter from my father. Feeling uneasy, I opened it with Jake beside me. What does it say? Jake asked. Is your dad planning to show up too, like your mom? No, it's not that, I said, my eyes widening as I read. Incredibly, the letter revealed that my dad had finally achieved his dream of becoming a cartoon artist. He had made his debut, and his work had been a success. Not only that, but his cartoon was being adapted into both a TV series and a live-action movie. Dad, congratulations, I whispered, overwhelmed with pride and happiness. I couldn't believe such wonderful things were happening. It felt unreal. After so many years of hard work, my dad's efforts had finally paid off, and the results were amazing. I wanted to tell him directly how proud and happy I was, so I immediately wrote back to his letter, expressing my excitement and asking if we could meet. Not long after, I received his reply. He agreed to meet and wrote, "Let's meet next week. I'm really looking forward to seeing you. I have so much to share. It would be our first reunion in 16 years. Would it be okay if I came along?" Jake asked. "Of course," I said. "He'll be so happy to meet you." When the day finally came, we went to my dad's apartment. As I reached out to ring the doorbell, I heard the voices of children and a woman from inside. I paused, feeling a little confused. When the door opened, there he was, my dad. "Victoria, it's been such a long time. You've grown into a fine young woman. And this must be your fiancé, Jake. You've chosen well," he said warmly. "It's been so long, Dad," I said, smiling. "But what are those voices I heard inside?" He hesitated for a moment and then said, "I'm sorry, I didn't tell you earlier. Actually, I've remarried." I had a feeling this might be the case, but hearing it confirmed still surprised me. We decided to go to a nearby diner, the same one I had visited before, and took our time catching up. This time we sat down, ate, and talked without rushing. Being with my dad after so many years felt like stepping back in time. The warmth and nostalgia of our conversation made it even more special. "Dad, congratulations on your debut as a cartoon artist," I said with pride. "And the adaptations, both the cartoon and the movie. That's an incredible achievement." "Thank you," he said, his face lighting up. "It's what saved me. I was ready to give up if it didn't work out this time. In fact, I even quit my job to focus on this challenge."
What?
"What would you have done if it hadn't worked out?" I asked, shocked. "Did your wife agree to that?" He laughed nervously. "Well, it worked out in the end, didn't it? But there were some tense moments at home because of it." He explained that the reason he hadn't reached out earlier was because he wasn't sure how things would turn out with his career as a cartoon artist. He wanted to wait until he felt more stable and confident in his success. "When I saw you watching me that day," he said, "I was at a low point. My wife had temporarily left with the kids because of the financial stress. I felt broken."
"But you made it through," I said.
"Yes," he said, smiling. "Once my debut was confirmed and I started earning good royalties, I decided to move to a better apartment. My wife and children forgave me and came back home. After everything you've faced, you've finally succeeded," I said, feeling both happy and proud. "Now I can finally give my family the good life they deserve," he said with a contented smile. Hearing this made me realize how far he had come, overcoming so many challenges to achieve his dream. It was inspiring and gave me hope for the future. "I wasn't the best father before," my dad said, looking regretful, "but maybe this success can make up for some of my past mistakes." "It's not about being perfect, Dad," I replied. "I've always loved you. The struggles you faced were mostly because of Mom." Hearing that, I decided to tell him about my mom's shocking past. Even though he had once understood her better than anyone, he was stunned by what I revealed. He looked at me in disbelief, struggling to process it all. "Well," he said after a pause, "I guess I wasn't completely wrong about her." "What do you mean?" I asked. "I always wondered why I married your mother," he admitted. "But I think I know now. When I first met her, I saw the flaws in her personality, and I thought I could use those traits as material for my cartoon stories." Hearing him say that, I couldn't help but admire his honesty and passion for his art. "Dad, you've come such a long way," I said. Then, turning to Jake, my dad said, "Jake, I know I'm not a perfect father-in-law, but I hope you'll continue to support us." Jake smiled warmly.
"Don't worry about that."
"Thank you, and congratulations on achieving your dream. I'm so happy for you, and hope you find even more success in the future." Things seemed to be going well, and I thought I could finally leave the past behind. But when I got back to my apartment, I was met with a shocking sight. My mother, the same woman I had thrown out before, was standing outside, with her troublesome husband and a girl who looked like she was in middle school. I stared at her, stunned. Is that Sydney, all grown up? I asked in disbelief. Why are you acting like this, Victoria? My mom snapped. That attitude toward your mother is unacceptable. You're just as unpleasant as ever. Unbelievable, I muttered. What are you even doing here? Her husband chimed in. Quiet down, everyone. This is a public space. Let's go inside. Once they were inside, I tried to stay calm, but it wasn't easy. Why are you here? I asked firmly. There was a moment of silence before my mom said, There's been some trouble. There are rumors about fraud involving me and my husband. But it's just gossip. Nothing has been confirmed. Her husband quickly added, It's all just a misunderstanding. Some small mistake at the nightclub blew up into something bigger. So, are you being questioned by prosecutors now? I asked sharply. Well, yes, my mom admitted. But it's nothing serious. I'm sure it'll blow over. I shook my head, exhausted by the endless chaos she brought into my life. Please, enough already. I hope this doesn't interfere with my wedding. And just so we're clear, you're not invited. Her husband frowned. What kind of daughter talks to her mother like that? You're her biological child. It's only natural for you to help out a little. We need money to hire a lawyer. That's right, my mom said, jumping in. You're my daughter, and that means you have a responsibility to help me. And you're my real sister, Sydney added smugly, as if that would make a difference. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Their true motive was painfully clear. They only cared about getting money from me. I don't care about their futures anymore. Maybe it's harsh to say, but don't you think you're asking too much from me? I said firmly.
What?
Who cares what an outsider like you thinks? My mom's husband snapped at Jake. You're just a regular employee. What makes you think you have any right to talk? People like you are so annoying. Hearing this, I was furious. But before I could respond, the situation took an unexpected turn. Excuse me for speaking up, Jake said calmly, but like Victoria's father, I have big ambitions. Even though I'm almost 41, my dream is to pass the bar exam and become a prosecutor. My stepfather scoffed. That's a noble dream, but I doubt someone like you can make it happen. I couldn't take it anymore. Just as I was about to throw the glass of water I was holding at them, Jake gently grabbed my hand and stopped me. I aspire to be a prosecutor because my father works as one in the prosecutor's office, Jake added confidently. The room went silent. Their smug attitudes instantly shifted. Wait, is that true? My mom asked, clearly surprised. Please, Jake, could you ask your father to help us? My husband isn't a bad person, and I'm not involved in any fraud. Even Sydney chimed in. You're my brother-in-law, right? Please listen to what we're asking for. I had heard enough. Without saying much more, I resolutely decided it was time to kick them out. They had no place in my life anymore. A few days later, I attended a party hosted by a publishing house to celebrate my father's new book release. My father, his new wife, and their children were there, and it felt so different from the life I had left behind. How's your mother doing now? Someone at the party asked me. We've cut ties, I said simply. That family doesn't matter to me anymore. That's a strong decision, they replied, but I can't blame you. My father's book was based on a cartoon he had drawn about my mother. The story was about a controlling housewife whose strange behavior caused everyone around her to avoid her. The unique theme had caught the attention of a publisher and led to his success. Actually, I told them. She contacted me recently, claiming the book was based on her and demanding to be paid for it. Unbelievable, they said, shaking their head. She really hasn't changed. No, I replied. Cutting ties was the right decision. Later, I found out my stepfather had been prosecuted and sentenced to life in prison for his fraud schemes. As for my mom, she started working as a hostess at a bar connected to the nightclub where her husband had worked. It was her first real job. Sydney, meanwhile, continued her studies in the local community, working hard for a better future. As for me, Jake and I built a strong bond with my father's new family. We eventually moved into the beautiful apartment my father now owned, sharing a life filled with peace and happiness. We're excited about what lies ahead, especially the day Jake achieves his dream of becoming a prosecutor. Hi everyone, I'm Deborah Messing, and honestly, I'm not even sure where to begin. I'm 33 years old, doing well in my marketing career, and thought I had finally figured out how to manage all the drama in my family. But everything took a turn when my younger sister, Janet, started planning her wedding. I wanted nothing more than to help her create the perfect day, but I quickly realized it was going to be way more complicated than I had anticipated. The biggest shadow looming over the entire event was our dad, Jeremy. Ever since his divorce, he hasn't been the same. He's been struggling, slipping deeper into a cycle of drinking and making poor choices. And, in my opinion, one of the worst choices he's made is his new girlfriend, Julie. From the moment I met her, I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling. Something about her just didn't sit right with me. One afternoon, while Janet and I were at a flower shop picking out arrangements, she suddenly turned to me, her face clouded with worry. "Deborah, do you think Dad will actually show up sober?" she asked, her voice soft but tinged with desperation. I took a deep breath, trying to stay optimistic for her sake. "I really hope so," I said, forcing a smile. "For your sake, Janet, I truly do." But deep down, I wasn't so sure. Hoping for the best didn't feel like enough, and the closer we got to the wedding day, the more I felt like I wasn't just her maid of honor. I was becoming a full-time peacekeeper. My boyfriend, Aaron, was a rock through it all. He always knew how to calm me down when I was spiraling. "Babe, you can't control everything," he'd remind me gently whenever I got too worked up. I know, I'd reply, though in my heart, the worry wouldn't let me rest. I couldn't help thinking, if Dad ruins Janet's wedding, I'll never forgive him. But as stressful as everything already was, I had no idea things were about to get even worse. About a week before the wedding, I met up with my best friend, Christina, for coffee. Christina has always been my go-to for advice, the voice of reason I desperately needed. I spilled everything to her, hoping she could help me untangle the mess in my head. "What's really going on with you and Julie?" Christina asked, raising an eyebrow as she leaned closer. Her tone told me she already suspected something was up. I glanced around nervously, lowering my voice as if someone might overhear us. "There's just something off about her, Christina," I admitted. The way she latched onto Dad so quickly, how she's always whispering things to him. And get this, one night, I overheard Julie on the phone talking about some big score she was planning. Her tone was low and secretive, and my gut immediately twisted. Christina's eyes widened as I shared this with her. "You think she's scamming your dad?" she asked, her voice sharp with concern. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I'm going to find out." That conversation lit a fire in me. I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something wasn't right, and I needed answers. Late at night, after work, I found myself scrolling through Julie's social media, trying to connect the dots. I even made quiet calls to a few of Dad's old friends, hoping they might shed some light on her sudden presence in his life. The deeper I dug, the more uneasy I felt. It was like piecing together a puzzle, but I wasn't sure I wanted to know what picture would emerge once it was complete. The day before the wedding, Janet and I were at the venue doing some final checks. The decorations were coming together beautifully, and for a moment, I let myself relax. But that calm shattered when Dad and Julie showed up unannounced.
"Daddy."
Janet squealed, running to him with open arms. Her joy was palpable, but my heart sank the moment I saw him. His smile was sloppy, his words slurred. He was already drunk. Julie, on the other hand, looked composed, too composed. Her sharp eyes darted around the room like she was sizing everything up. "Andre, darling," she purred, wrapping her arm around him, "let's go check out the bar." She glanced at me with a smug, knowing expression before leading him away. Anger boiled inside me, but I swallowed it for Janet's sake. I turned to her just as her happy expression faltered, tears welling up in her eyes. "Deborah," she started, her voice trembling. I pulled her into a tight hug before she could say anything else. "Don't worry, sis," I whispered firmly. "Tomorrow is about you and Patrick. Nothing is going to ruin it." But deep down, I wasn't so sure. They say there's always a calm before the storm, and ours was brewing. Little did I know, it would hit with the force of a hurricane. The wedding ceremony itself was breathtaking. Janet looked absolutely radiant in her gown, her face glowing with happiness as she exchanged vows with Patrick. For a brief, shining moment, it felt like all the chaos had melted away. Watching her up there, I let myself hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could get through this day without any major disasters. But that fragile hope didn't last. The moment we walked into the reception, my stomach dropped. There he was, Dad, standing by the bar, drink in hand, with Julie clinging to his arm like she was afraid to let go. His face was flushed, and his laughter was far too loud. It was painfully obvious that he was drunk again. Aaron, who had been by my side all day, leaned in close, his voice soft. "You okay?" he asked, sensing my tension. I clenched my fists, trying to steady my breathing. "I've got to hold it together for Janet," I muttered, forcing a tight smile. But inside, I was raging. All I wanted was for Janet to have the perfect day she deserved. But as I watched Dad stumble over to a group of guests, sloshing his drink and laughing too loudly, I knew the storm was about to break. And it wasn't going to be pretty. I forced a smile, muttering reassurances, but deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before things went completely off the rails. The tension in the room thickened as the evening wore on. Dad's laughter became louder, his movements sloppier, and Julie's eyes darted around the venue with a gleam that made my stomach twist. Something felt deeply wrong, and I couldn't shake the unease. "Deborah," Janet whispered, tugging on my arm, her voice trembling. "Dad's making a scene?" I turned to her, forcing a confident tone I didn't feel. "I'll handle it," I promised. Taking a deep breath, I walked toward where Dad was attempting a wobbly Macarena, laughing uproariously and nearly toppling over with each move. He looked like he didn't have a care in the world, or a shred of self-awareness. "Dad," I said, keeping my tone as calm as possible, "let's step outside for some fresh air." "Nonsense," he slurred, waving me off dramatically. "I'm celebrating my baby girl's big day." He attempted a clumsy twirl and nearly crashed into a nearby table. Before I could steady him, Julie materialized at his side, gripping his arm tightly. "Leave him alone," she snapped, her tone sharp and defensive. "He's just having fun." "This isn't about fun," I replied evenly, though my voice was tight with frustration. "It's about respecting Janet on her special day." Julie's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a sneer. "You think you're so perfect, don't you? Always acting like you're in charge. Like you're better than everyone else." The words hit a nerve. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "This isn't about me. It's about Janet. She deserves better than this circus." The argument escalated quickly, and in an effort to keep things from blowing up in the middle of the reception, I motioned for us to step into a quieter corner. But our voices rose with each exchange, the tension between us boiling over. "You don't know anything about our family," I spat, my patience fraying as I stared her down. Julie's face darkened. "I know one thing," she hissed. "Your daddy prefers my company over yours." The words hit like a slap. Something inside me snapped. "Oh, really?" I shot back, my voice trembling with anger. "Is that before or after you drained him of his money, Julie?" Her face twisted with fury, and before I had time to process what was happening, she lunged at me. In one swift motion, she yanked off her heeled sandal and swung it at my head. Time seemed to slow as I felt the sharp impact of the heel connecting with my temple. Pain radiated through my skull, and everything around me erupted into chaos. Guests screamed and scattered, chairs overturned, and the room filled with panicked shouts and gasps. Through the haze of pain and confusion, I could only think of Janet. How had it come to this? I had promised to protect her happiness, yet here we were, her wedding day spiraling into a nightmare. I caught sight of Janet's horrified face in the crowd. Patrick held her back, his arms wrapped protectively around her as she sobbed, frozen in disbelief. My heart shattered at the sight, knowing this was supposed to be her perfect day, and it was anything but. Security rushed in, grabbing Julie and pulling her away as she thrashed and screamed obscenities at anyone within earshot. Her wild shrieks echoed through the venue, adding to the chaos. I stood there, dazed, clutching the side of my head, feeling the sting of tears and the throbbing pain from the blow. Around me, the once joyous reception was now a blur of scattered guests, toppled decorations, and shocked whispers. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, a memory Janet would cherish forever. Instead, it had turned into a nightmare none of us would forget. I stood frozen in place as the police arrived, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow over what was supposed to have been a magical evening. Julie was led away in handcuffs, her defiant screams echoing in the night. In that brief moment, I caught a glimpse of Dad. He looked completely lost, his face etched with confusion and pain. For the first time, I realized things would never be the same. The days after the wedding were a blur. Between filing police reports, giving interviews, and enduring countless sleepless nights, I felt like I was living in a nightmare that wouldn't end. Every sound made me jump, and the image of Julie lunging at me with her sandal replayed in my mind over and over like a cruel, unrelenting loop. Aaron, my rock through everything, held me close whenever the nightmares hit. "You're safe now, Deborah," he'd whisper, his voice calm and soothing. But no matter how many times he said it, feeling safe seemed impossible. How could I, when my own father's girlfriend had attacked me at my sister's wedding? How do you even begin to heal from something like that? Janet, understandably, was a wreck. When I visited her about a week later, she looked like a shell of herself. Her once bright eyes were dull, and she couldn't even meet my gaze. "All those months of planning," she said, her voice heavy with sorrow. "And for what? My wedding will always be remembered as the day someone tried to hurt my sister." "Janet, I'm so sorry," I began, the guilt weighing heavily on me. I had promised to protect her happiness, and I had failed. She shook her head, cutting me off. "I know it's not your fault, Deborah. But still, I can't help feeling like our family is cursed or something." While Janet was drowning in her own pain, Dad was living in complete denial. He called me constantly, leaving voicemails that made my blood boil. "Deborah, sweetie, let's not blow this out of proportion," one message began. Julie was just upset. She didn't mean any harm. Hearing him defend her like that after everything she had done made my stomach churn with anger. How could he excuse her actions? How could he still be on her side? The final straw came a few days later when Dad showed up at my apartment, reeking of alcohol. I opened the door to find him swaying slightly, his eyes glassy and unfocused. "Dad, you need to leave," I said, my voice as steady as I could manage. "But Pumpkin, we're family," he slurred, his tone pitiful. "We need to stick together." Something hardened inside me as I looked at him, this broken, unrecognizable version of the man who had once been my father. "No, Dad," I said firmly. "We're done. I can't do this anymore." The hurt in his eyes almost made me waver. Almost. But as I closed the door in his face, I knew I had made the right decision. Some wounds couldn't heal if I kept reopening them. Meanwhile, Christina, my ever-determined best friend, had taken it upon herself to dig into Julie's past. One evening, she called me over to her apartment, her voice tinged with urgency. When I arrived, she spread a pile of papers across her coffee table. "Deborah, look at this," she said, her tone grim. "Julie's got a record. Assault, fraud, theft, you name it." I stared at the papers in disbelief, my mind reeling. There it was, in black and white, proof of everything I had suspected but never had the courage to voice. Julie wasn't just toxic, she was dangerous. I scanned the documents, each page twisting my stomach tighter with a sickening realization. How could Dad not know about this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Christina hesitated, her lips pressed tightly together. Then she sighed. "That's the thing, Deborah," she said, her tone heavy. "I think he did know." The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. I stared at her, willing her to say she was wrong. But she wasn't. The evidence was right in front of me. Joint bank accounts, suspicious money transfers, and other financial red flags. It wasn't just that Dad had been manipulated by Julie. He had participated. He wasn't just a victim. He was an accomplice. Telling Janet what we had discovered was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. We sat together in her small, cozy kitchen, the unopened wedding gifts stacked in the corner like relics of a dream turned sour. "I can't believe it," Janet whispered, tears streaming down her face. "How could he do this to us? How could he let her?" She trailed off, shaking her head. "I don't even know him anymore." I reached for her hand, my heart aching for her. "I don't know who Dad is either," I admitted softly. "But right now, we need to protect ourselves. We can't let this pull us down." Janet looked up at me, her tear-streaked face hardening with resolve. "I'm with you, Deborah. Always." Her determination gave me strength, but it didn't erase the guilt that clung to me. By exposing Dad's crimes, I had effectively destroyed whatever was left of his life. Yet deep down, I knew I wasn't the one who had ruined him. He had done that all on his own. The mix of anger, confusion, and guilt became too much to handle on my own, so I decided to get help. That's how I found myself sitting in a therapist's office for the first time, trying to make sense of the mess my life had become. "It's normal to feel conflicted," my therapist, Dr. Frank, reassured me during one of our sessions. Her voice was calm and steady, like an anchor in the storm of my emotions. "You've been through something traumatic. You're grieving the loss of the father you thought you knew." I stared at my hands, feeling the sting of tears I wasn't ready to shed. "But shouldn't I hate him? After everything he's done?" "There's no should when it comes to emotions," she said gently. "What's important is that you acknowledge how you feel and give yourself the space to work through it." Working through it sounded simple when she said it, but it wasn't. The pain, anger, and betrayal didn't disappear overnight. But as I left her office that day, I felt a tiny flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild something good from the ruins of my family's past. 5 months after the wedding disaster, I found myself in a place I never thought I'd be: happy. Despite everything that had happened, I realized I was surrounded by love and support. Janet, Aaron, Christina, and I had become an unbreakable team. Our shared pain had forged a bond stronger than ever before. One night, the 4 of us were gathered around my dining table, sharing dinner and laughter. The apartment was filled with warmth, the kind of joy I had once feared I'd lost forever. Janet raised her glass, a small but genuine smile lighting up her face. "To new beginnings," she said, her voice steady with hope. "And to family, the one we choose." We clinked glasses, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel broken. I felt whole. In that moment, I knew that no matter what the future held, I had the strength to face it, and I had my chosen family by my side. I raised my glass, clinking it with my sisters, a smile tugging at my lips. The toast felt like a symbolic closing of one chapter and the start of another. But as Janet and I shared a moment of calm, the storm surrounding Julie's trial raged on, drawing the attention of every media outlet in town. The courtroom had become a circus, and sitting there day after day, my stomach churned as more of Julie's dark history came to light. Dad sat beside me, his face pale and frozen in disbelief as her past crimes were laid bare: fraud, theft, and manipulation stretching back years. Each new revelation was like another dagger to our already wounded family. But the most shocking moment hadn't even arrived yet. Behind the scenes, Christina and I had been working tirelessly to uncover the full extent of Dad's involvement in Julie's schemes. We pored over bank records, emails, and financial transactions, piecing together a picture that was far worse than I'd feared. When our lawyer stood up during the trial, I felt my breath catch in my throat. "Your Honor," he began, his voice clear and steady, "we have documentation proving Jeremy Messing's involvement in Miss Lang's fraudulent activities." The courtroom fell silent, and I heard Dad inhale sharply beside me. I couldn't bring myself to look at him. The truth was finally out. He wasn't just a victim of Julie's manipulation, he had played an active role in her schemes. As the legal drama unfolded, my personal life took a surprising and uplifting turn. One sunny Thursday afternoon, my boss called me into his office. I walked in nervously, unsure of what to expect, but his warm smile immediately set me at ease. "Deborah," he said, leaning forward, "we've been incredibly impressed with your work. Your resilience and creativity over the past year have been outstanding. I'm happy to let you know we're promoting you to Senior Marketing Director. I stared at him in disbelief. Thank you. I don't even know what to say. You've earned it, he said simply, shaking my hand. The moment I left his office, I pulled out my phone to call Aaron. You won't believe this, I said, my voice trembling with excitement. I got promoted. Aaron's joyful laugh echoed through the line. That's amazing, babe. I'm so proud of you. We need to celebrate tonight. Even amidst all the chaos, there were glimmers of hope and joy. Janet and Patrick, determined to move forward, made a beautiful decision. They decided to renew their vows. This time, it wasn't an elaborate event. It was a small, intimate ceremony in their backyard, with only close friends and family. Second time's the charm, Patrick joked, his warm smile making Janet laugh as they exchanged rings again. Watching them, I felt a deep sense of peace. The wounds from the past weren't gone, but they were healing, slowly but surely. Finally, the day of Julie's sentencing arrived. The courtroom was thick with tension as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict. Sitting there, I reflected on how much had changed since that disastrous wedding day. We had been through so much pain and betrayal, but somehow, we had survived. We had grown stronger. We were moving forward. When the judge called for victim impact statements, I stood up, my hands trembling slightly, but my voice firm. The scars from that night run deep, I began, my gaze steady. But they've made me stronger. What happened shattered parts of my family and left wounds I never thought would heal. Yet, through that pain, I found resilience. I found strength. And I found the family I choose to stand beside me. As I spoke, I could feel the weight lifting from my chest. This was my moment to reclaim control, to stand up not just for myself, but for Janet, for my family, and for the life we were rebuilding. When I finished, the room was silent for a beat before the judge nodded solemnly. Julie received her sentence, and with it came a sense of closure. Walking out of the courthouse that day, I felt the sunlight on my face and realized something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. The storm had passed. We weren't the same as we had been before, but we were stronger. We had found our way back to each other, and together, we were finally ready to embrace the future. I locked eyes with Julie, feeling a surge of strength. This was my moment to reclaim my life, to draw a line between the person I had been and the survivor I had become. I'm here today, I said, my voice steady, not as a victim, but as a survivor. As Julie was led away in handcuffs, I felt an unexpected sense of closure. It was as if the weight of that long, painful chapter was finally being lifted. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe freely. But the real celebration came a month later. Janet, Patrick, Aaron, Christina, and I gathered at my favorite restaurant to celebrate my promotion and everything we had overcome together. The evening was warm and full of light, the kind of night that reminds you life can be good again. To Deborah, Christina said, raising her glass, her smile wide and proud. The strongest person I know. I couldn't let her finish without chiming in. To all of us, I added, lifting my glass and glancing around the table. These were the people who had stood by me through the hardest year of my life, the ones who never let me fall when everything felt like it was crumbling. For proving that family isn't just about blood, but about loyalty and love. We clinked glasses, and the sound of laughter filled the air. As we shared stories, teasing each other and reminiscing about the highs and lows, I felt something shift inside me. I realized how much had changed, not just in my life, but in me. The past year had been like a nightmare, filled with pain, betrayal, and loss. But in a strange way, it had also been a gift. It had shown me who really mattered, taught me how strong I could be, and gave me the courage to cut out the toxicity that had been holding me back. Sitting there, surrounded by people who genuinely cared for me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. This wasn't the perfect happy ending I had dreamed of as a little girl. It came with scars and memories I wished I could erase. But it was real, and that made it beautiful. For the second time in years, I felt hopeful about the future. I was grateful for the family I had found, the love that surrounded me, and the strength I had discovered within myself. And so, that's where my story ends, or at least this chapter of it. But now, I'm curious. If you were in my shoes, would you have given your father another chance after everything he did? Or would you have kept those boundaries in place like I did? It's a tough decision, and I know many of you have faced similar struggles with toxic family members. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences in the comments. How have you handled difficult family dynamics in your own lives? If my story resonated with you, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more real-life stories and honest conversations about navigating complicated relationships. Together, we can find strength in sharing and maybe even help someone else find their way through the storm.
My wife cheated on me with her gym trainer. She asked for half of everything in the divorce, but she didn't know that my dad secretly owned our house and savings. I never thought I'd be sharing my story here, but here I am. I'm 38 years old and work as an accountant. I've been with the same local firm for almost 12 years now. I've always considered myself a pretty practical and calm person, which is probably why I'm able to keep my cool through all of this. I'm married to Joyce, who's 35. We don't have any kids, and looking back, that seems like a blessing now. Joyce hasn't worked since we got married. She used to work in marketing, but once we tied the knot, she wanted to take a break and focus on us. I didn't mind because I make enough to support us both, and I thought it was just temporary. We've got a house and a decent amount of savings. It's nothing fancy, but we were comfortable. Joyce was home most of the time, but lately, things started to feel different. It's hard to say exactly when I first noticed, but she began to act distant. She'd stay out longer when she went out with her friends or to the gym, and she stopped being affectionate. Whenever I asked her what was going on, she'd get defensive. At first, I thought it was just stress or maybe a rough patch in our marriage. But as the weeks went by, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. And unfortunately, I was right. One evening, while Joyce was in the shower, her phone buzzed with a message. Out of reflex, I glanced at it. It was from a guy named James. At first, I didn't think much of it, but something about the way the message was written didn't sit right with me. It said, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, babe." My stomach dropped. I opened the message, and what I found confirmed my worst fears. She had been seeing James, her gym trainer, for months. The texts were clear, there was no mistaking it. They were making plans for the future, plans that didn't include me. I just sat there, staring at her phone, frozen. I couldn't believe it. The woman I married, the person I trusted the most, was cheating on me. But instead of feeling angry or heartbroken, I just felt numb. Maybe it was the shock, or maybe it was my practical side kicking in, but I knew things were about to change. I had to talk to her without losing my temper. When she came out of the bathroom, I calmly handed her the phone and asked her to explain. At first, she tried to deny it, saying it was nothing and just a joke. But when I read some of the texts out loud to her, she realized there was no point in lying. "I want a divorce," she said, without showing any regret. There was no apology, no guilt, just a cold, emotionless statement. She admitted she had been seeing James for a while and wasn't happy in our marriage anymore. She didn't try to soften the blow. She was leaving me for him. What shocked me the most was what she said next. Without any hesitation, she started talking about splitting our stuff. She said she wanted half of everything, the house, the savings, everything we had built together. She even said she deserved it because she had given up her career to support mine. I couldn't believe her nerve. I stayed calm. Maybe it was because I was already emotionally done at that point, or maybe because I knew something she didn't. So I agreed. I told her if she wanted a divorce, I wouldn't fight her on it. She could have half of what she thought I had. She looked surprised, probably expecting me to argue or have an emotional breakdown, but I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. What Joyce didn't know, and what I didn't feel like telling her, was that most of our assets were in my dad's name. My father is a smart guy, and years ago, when I started making decent money, he suggested I put all the big things, like the house and savings, under his name. He explained it was a way to protect myself in case something went wrong in the future, whether it was debts, lawsuits, or as it turns out, a cheating wife. At the time, I didn't think much of it. It just seemed like smart financial planning. So, when Joyce demanded half of everything, I knew she wasn't going to get what she expected. On paper, I didn't own much, just a modest bank account, my car, and a few other small things. The house? Technically, it belonged to my dad. The bulk of my savings? Also under my dad's control. Instead of dragging this into a long court battle, I suggested we go through mediation. I thought it would be easier and cheaper for both of us. She agreed, clearly thinking she'd walk away with a big portion of my assets. But what she didn't know was that this setup with my dad had been in place for years. Honestly, I had almost forgotten about it myself until the divorce talk started. I had planned for something like this, but I can't deny how grateful I am for my dad's foresight. The house we lived in, along with most of the investments and savings Maria had her eyes on, were technically owned by him. I had always kept a low financial profile in my own name, living modestly enough that no one, including Maria, really questioned it. As soon as the divorce process started, I told my dad about it. He wasn't happy with the situation, what father would be, but he understood the importance of keeping everything quiet. We consulted a lawyer just to make sure everything was legally solid, and it turns out everything was in perfect order. Maria could demand all she wanted, but there wasn't much in my name for her to take. Maria didn't waste any time and hired an aggressive divorce lawyer, one of those tough attorneys who promises to get everything they can. Meanwhile, I hired a low-key but experienced lawyer, someone who specializes in cases like mine, where there are complicated financial situations. I didn't want a big fight, but I also wasn't going to let Maria and her lawyer push me around. The first step in the divorce process was the asset disclosure, where each person has to show what they own. As you can imagine, this didn't go the way Maria had hoped. I laid everything out honestly, just like the law requires. But when she saw how little there was in my name, her lawyer's confident smile started to fade. I could tell they were both confused, maybe even suspicious, but there wasn't much they could do. Everything I provided was true, and I wasn't hiding any assets. Right there, Maria started yelling at me, calling me names and accusing me of lying. But like I said, I gave her everything I had. After all the shouting and accusations, I told her we could talk again once she calmed down. And now here I am, turning to Reddit because I'm not sure if I handled this the right way. So, Reddit, am I wrong for agreeing to give her half of what's mine, knowing she's not actually getting what she expects? Update, things are starting to get more intense. After the initial asset disclosure, Maria was in total disbelief. She kept accusing me of hiding things, and her lawyer wasn't much better. The look on their faces when they saw the modest numbers was priceless. It didn't take long for them to demand a deeper investigation. Maria kept asking where all the money was. She thought there should be a lot more after all these years. She couldn't believe that, after being married for so long, there wasn't more to divide. Her lawyer quickly hired a forensic accountant to dig deeper, thinking they could find hidden assets. I had saved some money in hidden accounts. At first, I was a bit nervous, not because I had anything to hide, but because I knew this would drag the process out. But after talking with my lawyer and going over everything again, I realized there was nothing they could legally find. Everything I had claimed was 110% true, and there was no way to trace the assets in my dad's name. As the investigation went on, I could see Maria getting more and more frustrated. She was used to getting her way, but this time, there was nothing for her to take. It seemed like she couldn't believe that she was walking away with almost nothing. Maria then tried a new angle. She argued that she had contributed a lot to my career and our lifestyle by staying home and managing the house. She claimed that because she took care of things at home, I was able to focus on my job and advance in my career. While I admit it was helpful at times, it wasn't like I was running a huge company. I'm just a mid-level accountant, and my job has been stable for years. There wasn't any big rise in my income that she could point to and say, I helped him get there. Still, she tried to push this idea. She kept saying she had sacrificed her own career in marketing to support mine. But the truth is, she didn't work for long before deciding she wanted to stay home, and that was her choice, not something I ever asked her to do. Her lawyer brought this up again and again, trying to make me look like someone who benefited from her sacrifice, but there wasn't much proof to back that up. At one point, they even tried to involve my parents in the case. Maria wanted to prove that my parents had secretly been giving me money or helping me hide assets. This really made me angry because my parents had nothing to do with this. Dragging them into it was a cheap move, but thankfully, my lawyer shut down that idea pretty quickly. It was clear Maria was getting desperate. As the divorce went on, Maria decided to take matters into her own hands. Since she wasn't getting what she wanted through the courts, she tried to ruin my reputation instead. She started telling everyone in our social circle that I had been hiding money from her and that I was financially abusive during our marriage. I couldn't believe the lies she was spreading. Mutual friends would tell me about how she kept going on, claiming I was leaving her with nothing. She started saying that I had tricked her into thinking we had more money than we actually did. She even went on social media, posting vague but obvious comments about narcissistic partners and betrayal. Of course, some people sided with her. There are always people who take the side of the person who looks like they've been wronged. But most of our close friends knew better. They knew I wasn't the type to do something like that. It was frustrating to watch her try to ruin my reputation just because things weren't going her way, but I tried not to let it bother me. I knew the truth, and the people who mattered knew it too. Besides, I had bigger things to focus on, like making sure she didn't take more than she deserved. While Maria was busy spreading lies, I was making sure I was fully prepared. My lawyer and I were in constant contact, making sure we had all the evidence needed to prove my side of the story. I documented every interaction I had with Maria, every demand she made, and every time she tried to make me look like the bad guy. I knew that if this ever went to court, having that proof would be important. I also started gathering evidence of her affair with James. While cheating doesn't always have a big impact on divorce settlements, I wanted to make sure it was clear that she wasn't the victim here. I had screenshots of the texts she sent him, pictures they took together, and even statements from some of her friends who knew about the affair but kept quiet. It wasn't about embarrassing her, I just wanted the truth to come out. On top of that, I began preparing for the fallout. I knew that once she realized she wasn't going to get half of everything, things would get ugly. So, I kept my distance, focused on my work and life, while making sure I was ready for the next stage of the divorce. One thing that made the whole situation even more interesting was James's reaction. When Maria first told him she wanted to leave me for him, he seemed all for it. They had this fantasy of starting a new life together. But once the divorce started getting complicated, James began to pull back. It turns out he wasn't as committed to Maria as she thought. From what I've heard, he started getting cold feet when he realized being with her might mean dealing with her financial problems. Maria had expected this big new life with James, but he wasn't ready to commit to that. James started losing clients at the gym because of the scandal. It turns out people don't want a trainer who's known for getting involved with married women. Now James is trying to distance himself from Maria, and she's starting to see that this isn't the fairy tale she thought it would be. I almost feel sorry for her, but then I remember everything she's done. As for me, I'm feeling conflicted. On one hand, I feel a sense of relief. I'm glad I protected my assets, and I'm glad Maria isn't walking away with what she expected. But at the same time, I feel sad. This was my marriage, and I once loved Maria. I thought we were going to build a life together. Seeing it all fall apart like this is tough, even if I know it's for the best. Update 1. Things have taken a pretty crazy turn since my last update. Maria is getting desperate, and it's starting to show in the worst ways. She has realized that she's not going to get the big payout she was hoping for, and now she's trying to make my life miserable. The latest thing is that she's been threatening to ruin my career and reputation at work. She told me that if I didn't make things easier for her, meaning give her more money, she'd make sure everyone at my firm thought I was a terrible person. At first, I wasn't sure what she meant by that, but it became clear when she started showing up at my office without warning. The first time, she acted calm, pretending she just needed to talk. But when I told her there was nothing left to discuss, she lost it. She started raising her voice, saying things like, "I'll make sure everyone here knows the truth about you." Luckily, I was able to get her out of there before it escalated, but it's clear she's becoming unpredictable. Her behavior at home, well, at her temporary home with her parents, has been erratic too. After realizing she wasn't going to get a big payday, she moved back in with her parents. From what I've heard, things aren't going well for her there. Her parents are supportive, but they're not exactly happy with how everything's turned out. Even they seem to see through her victim act. Some mutual friends have told me she's been lashing out, getting into fights with her family, and acting like she's on the edge of a breakdown. Update 2. The legal side of things has become more complicated too. Maria's lawyer is trying everything to dig up dirt on me. They've filed motions to subpoena my parents' financial records, even though my lawyer has explained multiple times that my parents' assets aren't part of this divorce. It's clearly an attempt to shake me up, but it's not working. Maria's legal team also filed a motion to question my coworkers, hoping to find anything that might suggest I'm hiding something. It's getting intense, but I'm staying calm and focused on making sure they don't get more than they're legally entitled to. They're trying to say that I'm hiding money or getting paid under the table, but they're just grasping at straws. It's exhausting to deal with. Every time we think we've addressed one of their requests, they come back with something else. The whole situation feels like a never-ending game of chess. Every move I make, Maria and her team try to counter. Thankfully, I've been able to stay ahead, thanks to my lawyer and the legal protections my father set up years ago. But it's draining, and I'm not sure how long I can keep this up before we end up in court for real. Speaking of legal matters, we've already tried mediation twice, and both times it was a disaster. The first session ended after about 30 minutes because Maria refused to back down from her demand for half of the house and our savings. My lawyer explained that the house was in my father's name and that there wasn't nearly as much money as she thought, but Maria didn't want to hear it. She stormed out, accusing me of lying and saying the mediator was biased against her. The second attempt wasn't much better. This time, Maria showed up with a list of totally unrealistic demands. She wanted full ownership of the house, half of all our savings even though they barely exist, and alimony for at least 6 years. When my lawyer calmly explained again that she wasn't entitled to any of that, Maria lost it. She started yelling about how she had sacrificed everything for me and how I was leaving her with nothing. I tried to stay calm, but inside, I was furious. She was the one who cheated. She was the one who wanted the divorce, and now she's acting like I'm ruining her life. It's unbelievable. After that session, it became clear that this divorce is headed to court whether I like it or not. On top of everything, Maria has been borrowing money from her family and friends to pay her legal fees. She clearly didn't expect the divorce to drag on this long, and now she's running out of funds. I'm not sure how she plans to keep paying her aggressive lawyer, but that's not my problem. The more desperate she gets, the more erratic her behavior becomes. Mutual friends have told me that she's spending most of her time at home, complaining to anyone who will listen about how I've ruined her life. It's gotten so bad that some of her friends have started distancing themselves from her because they're tired of the drama and her constant victim act. It seems like everything Maria thought she was going to get from this divorce is slipping through her fingers. Throughout all of this, I've been doing my best to stay calm and handle things strategically. Every time Maria makes a new accusation or demand, I make sure I'm prepared. I countered every accusation with proof. Anytime they asked for financial documents, I provided them because I had nothing to hide. My lawyer has been great about making sure we follow the law exactly, which is more than I can say for Maria's team. I've also been working hard to protect my parents' privacy. Maria's attempts to drag them into this mess have been frustrating, but thankfully there are legal protections in place to stop her from accessing their financial records. Still, the fact that she's even trying shows how desperate she's become. It's like she thinks if she digs deep enough, she'll find some hidden treasure I've been keeping from her, but there's nothing for her to find. Update 3. The day of the court hearing finally arrived, and the tension was intense. Maria was the first to testify, and she didn't hold back. She made it clear that she believed I had been hiding assets from her all along. She accused me of manipulating our finances, hiding money in secret accounts, and lying to her about how much we really had. She got emotional, painting herself as the victim who had sacrificed her career to support mine, only to be left with nothing. At one point, she was even sobbing, talking about how she had trusted me with everything and was blindsided by the divorce and my supposed financial tricks. But then came the turning point. My lawyer presented evidence of her affair with James. Once the texts, pictures, and details of her relationship with him were revealed, it became clear to everyone, jury, judge, everyone, what was really going on. Maria's story of being the victim started to fall apart right in front of me. At one point, she tried to downplay the affair, saying it was just a mistake and had nothing to do with the divorce, but by then the damage was done. Her credibility was ruined, and it was clear that her financial demands were more about greed than anything else. When it was my turn to testify, I stayed calm and focused on the facts. My lawyer had prepared me well, and I knew that getting emotional or defensive wouldn't help my case. I explained how my assets had been in my father's name for years, how I had provided full financial disclosures, and how I had tried to handle the divorce peacefully through mediation. I also talked about Maria's threats, her unpredictable behavior, and the smear campaign she had been running against me. My lawyer presented all the evidence of her accusations, both publicly and in court, and showed how baseless they were. We laid out the truth about our finances. The house belonged to my father, our savings were modest, and there was no hidden stash of money that Maria could claim. The judge seemed to appreciate how straightforward I was, and it felt like things were finally starting to turn in my favor. I didn't try to make Joyce look bad, but I also didn't hide the truth of what happened. The facts were clear, and I presented them without drama or exaggeration. A few key witnesses were called during the trial, and their testimonies helped wrap things up. First, my father took the stand. He explained the financial arrangement we had set up years ago, how the house was in his name, how the investments were under his control, and how all of this was done as a long-term financial protection. He made it clear that these assets were his, not mine, and that Joyce had no legal right to them. Next was one of my colleagues from work. Maria's team had tried to argue that I was hiding money by getting paid under the table or through secret bonuses. But my colleague quickly shut that down. He testified about my modest income and how my salary was transparent. There were no hidden payments, just the regular paycheck I had already disclosed. These witnesses were crucial in proving that Maria's accusations were groundless. The judge could see that there was no secret plan on my part, just a simple financial setup that Maria hadn't bothered to understand. After days of testimony and legal arguments, the judge finally gave the verdict. It was a huge relief to hear the decision. The divorce was ruled in my favor. Maria's demands for half of the house and our savings were denied completely. The judge ruled that since the house and most of our assets were in my father's name, Maria had no right to them. The only thing she was awarded was a small amount of alimony for a short time, just enough to cover her legal fees, not enough to maintain the lifestyle she was hoping for. The judge made it clear that her affair and her lack of financial contribution to the household played a role in his decision. He saw through her attempts to play the victim and ruled accordingly. As the decision was read, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. All the stress, the constant accusations, and the fear of losing everything melted away in that moment. I knew I was legally in the clear. Joyce, on the other hand, didn't take it well. As soon as the judge finished, she burst into tears, yelling that the system was unfair and that I had cheated her out of what was rightfully hers. She stormed out of the courtroom, leaving her lawyer looking exhausted. It was clear she hadn't prepared herself for the possibility of losing. For me, the immediate feeling was pure relief. I thanked my lawyer, who had done a great job throughout the whole process, and left the courthouse. My phone was buzzing with messages from friends and family congratulating me on the outcome. Word had spread quickly, and people in the community were already talking about the case. It felt good to know the truth was out and that I could finally move on with my life. But Joyce wasn't done. Outside the courthouse, she had a complete meltdown in front of a small crowd. She started screaming, saying that I had lied and manipulated the system, and that she was going to appeal the decision. The problem is, she doesn't have the money to do that. Her lawyer made it clear during the trial that she was running out of funds, and from what I've heard, she's still borrowing money from family and friends just to get by. That being said, I'm extremely grateful for my father's advice and foresight when it came to protecting my finances. Without his help, I don't know what kind of mess I'd be in right now. I'm also thankful for the support of my friends, family, and colleagues who stood by me, even when Maria was spreading rumors and trying to ruin my reputation. Looking forward, I'm hopeful. I know it will take time to fully recover, both emotionally and financially, but I'm ready to move on with my life. I've learned some important lessons from all of this, and I won't make the same mistakes again. For now, I'm focused on getting back to a sense of normalcy and enjoying the peace that comes with finally closing this chapter.